Welcome back to the second podcast on the Gurmukh Series, a new series that we just launched last week. And this is part 2 on the Jeevan, on the life of Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji. So in the last podcast, just to give a quick brief summary of what we went through, we talked about the meaning of a saint, which refers as Sant, Mahapurush. We gave examples from Gurbani as well. One of the examples that Bhai Jivanpal Singh Ji gave was Sant Rahata Suno Mere Bhai, Waki Mehma Katha Na Jai. That those great saints, we cannot explain their glory, their mehma. We cannot explain how great those saints are. We cannot truly praise them. And not just giving examples from Gurbani, many examples were given, many analogies were given as well. So definitely make sure that you guys check out that first podcast as well, which is available on our YouTube channel, but also on different platforms, right, David?
Yeah, also on Spotify, Apple Music, and all those different audio platforms as well, and SoundCloud as well.
So we'll put those in the description if you're watching this on YouTube. Otherwise, if you're watching this on Captivate, on those different platforms like Spotify and stuff, then you're watching it anyway, right? So just again, a brief summary. We talked about the word Sant, we talked about Mahapurush, we talked about how rare saints are as well. And then we talked more specifically about Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji and how it was a bachan that was given by Guru Gobind Singh Ji many years before, talking about a great saint coming to the pind known as Akhara. And we talked about their family and their parents and their kamai, which means that the great spiritual earnings that they had as well, which will hopefully inspire us as well, those who are parents or those who are going to become parents in the future as well. Many practical examples were given, right?
Yep.
And then also we had some cool stories as well, some amazing stories. For example, of Sant Ji, that they had read Siddhi Guru Granth Sahib Ji 500 times. And they were only about the age of 18 years old at that time, probably in their mid-teens, right? Mm-hmm. So, for somebody to read that in their first 18 years of their life, only learning how to read Gurbani at the age of around 5 years old, that's amazing. Yeah. Very inspirational as well. And one of the last things we talked about as well was when they started to learn from Sant Giani Sundar Singh Ji and those teachings that were given at that time before Sant Giani Sundar Singh Ji passed away. So we covered a lot in that last podcast. Part 1 is about 2.5 hours long, but there was so many gems in there.
There was a beautiful analogy at the end about the flower one, so make sure you check that out.
Definitely check out the first podcast. And thank you so much to all the Sangat, for everyone that tuned in, and for all your comments as well. We do read all the comments and we appreciate all the feedback and all the suggestions you gave as well. So let us know what you want us to cover next time. What topics do you want Ustadji to cover next time as well on the podcast? We've got some cool ideas that we have. But yeah, definitely a lot of good feedback, right, Gadavi Singh?
Yeah, and maybe just to start things off, we got a really good question in the comments, and maybe Ustadji can answer it. They said, not everyone can hope to become a Mahapurush. It surely requires you to leave the householder's lifestyle. Like, you can't really live a 9-to-5 lifestyle while doing prachar, while living this Mahapurush lifestyle. So what would you say to that, Ji?
So that question which came, and it's a really interesting question, was a question that a lot of people might have. Because when we hear the life of Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji, many other Mahapurush, Baba Nand Singh Ji, and we hear the lives of Baba Atra Singh Ji, and we look at their routine, and we'll be looking at the routine of Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji today, and it was such an intense routine. And looking at these routines, sometimes we might think that, how do we go on that path as well? How do we incorporate such a routine into our lives? So the question about householders, one comment I'll make is that there were many Mahapurush who were Grishti. Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji was Grishti themselves. So they had a family. Their children now have passed away, but their grandchildren are still around. So many people might know of Sant Avtar Singh Ji, Bhai Ji, who does Katha as well. And there's Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji's grandson. And there's other grandchildren of Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji still who are alive. So Sant Ji had a family life, but because their life was devoted to the Panth and doing prachar of the Panth, so that's where sometimes you might get a little bit confused, that a pracharik's life is a little bit different, where someone who's a pracharik, they're dedicating their life to the Panth. That's why when we look at their Jeevan is such where we can't really compare it to someone with a 9-to-5 job. Not saying that someone with a 9-to-5 job can't do prachar, because there's many Gursikh prachariks even now in the UK who are doing full-time jobs as well, and they're also doing loads of prachar. So that's not the point. But when we look at these Mahapurush, they were dedicating every single second to doing prachar and Gurbani prachar and teaching Santhia, Katha. So these sort of Mahapurush that we're looking at, it might be sometimes looking at their Jeevan might feel a bit daunting, that how do we get to that level? Now, we can also look at many Mahapurush who actually did the 9-to-5 as well, or even did more work than that. So there's one example, Sant Baba Puran Singh Ji Kricho Wale, and for a lot of their life, that life where they actually did so much kamai, they remained gupt. No one knew about them. And that avastha that they were in at that time, the avastha of Mahapurush, Jina Saas Gras Na Visra, Har Nama Man Mant, Tan Se Sei Nanaka, Puran Soi Sant. That avastha of Saas Gras, remembering Vaheguru with every single breath and every morsel of food, that avastha, they were parpak in that avastha, meaning they had reached that avastha. But no one really knew about them because they were gupt. And Baba Puran Singh Ji lived in a family life their whole life. And they also led their own carpentry workshop. They used to make wagons in Africa. Baba Puran Singh Ji in Kenya. So Baba Puran Singh Ji is a key example of someone who living in a grishti life, jaise jalm hai, kamal niralam murgai naisane. So the Mahapurush as such, just like the lotus flower, is in the muddy waters, but being in the muddy waters, they're unaffected by it. They live in the family household. They live the family life, the grishti household. They fulfill all their duties, but they have no attachment to it. That's the difference. And the lives of them Mahapurush, whether it's those Mahapurush who did Gurmat Prachar, whether those Mahapurush who actually did worldly jobs as well, in all of them we see one thing. Regardless of what they were doing, their chit was always focused on Simran. There's a pankti that actually reflects this conversation, is Haath pao kar kaam sab cheet naranjan nal.
Sanji.
That remember Vaheguru while doing your worldly duties, and that's what these Mahapurush did. And we hear so many examples of many Mahapurush who lead in the Grishti Jeevan, their focus would always be in doing Simran. So, coming back to that question, do you want to just summarize what was the sort of gist of what they were getting at again?
They were just asking more like, why is it, do you have to leave, totally leave like a Grishti?
Yeah, so that's answered by that question, that pankti of Gurbani, that you don't need to leave anything. Now, these Mahapurush that we're talking about, they're those Mahapurush who were dedicated to Gurmat Prachar. And there's also been many Mahapurush who maybe were not doing Gurmat Prachar as such, even though later on in their life they did do Gurmat Prachar, like Baba Puran Singh Ji. But during a very large amount of their life, they were just gupt, living the household life, and they were just doing the kamai. So I think that hopefully that gives some answer to that question.
So thank you for clearing that up. And for the Sangha that are watching and sending in their questions, we will try our best to answer them in the future. So do send them in and we do save them. So what we'll do now is we will continue with the Jeevani of Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji after Sant Giani Sundar Singh Ji had passed away. And then now Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji has taken over the seva. And I think one of the first things we should cover probably is the daily routine of Mahapurush, what they used to do every single day.
So in the last episode, we left where Sant Giani Sundar Singh Ji ascends to Sachkhand. So after that point, Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji, their seva, which Sant Giani Sundar Singh Ji gave him the bachan, they gave him this instruction that till your last breath, you're to teach Gurbani to Vidyarthis. That this khajana or this treasure of Arth of Gurbani that you've received, this khajana isn't to be kept just for yourself. as we gave the art of Sampada in the last episode, Sampada is the actual act of giving it forward. If we take treasure and keep it to ourselves, that's not the ethos of the Sampada. So Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji, their whole life, they dedicated it to spreading that Vidya. And this is something that Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji used to tell their Vidyarthis as well. As Vidya you've taken, if you've taken Santhya, and this is something we even say to this day, to any student who takes Santhya, and it's something that we try to live by as well. It's like a motto of our lives that Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh has given. That if you've taken Santhya, then taking that Santhya and keeping it to yourself, that's not the right thing. If you've taken any form of Vidya, you should share it with others. And it becomes your duty to, it's like you can't pay back your the value of the Santhya you received. Because in Sar Kutabli is written, Brahm Gyan Samadhanana. The daan, the charity of giving Brahm Gyan, and Gurbani is Brahm Gyan. Giving that Brahm Gyan, giving the Gyan of Gurbani, be it Santhya, be it the Gyan of the arts, giving that Santhya to anyone. So Bhai Gurdas Ji says this in their Bani, that Jaise Sat Mandar Kanchan ke usar dine, Taisa Pun Sikh ko ek sabd sikhayega. That Sat he is actually from the Sanskrit Shat, and Shat means 100. So many translation, I think the English translation of this actually confuses it and writes 7, because Sat in Punjabi is 7. But the Arthe is actually 100, because the Sat is coming from Sanskrit with a bindi, where it would be 100. So, Jaise Sat Mandar, Kanchan ke usar dine. Mandir could just even mean a building. Make 100 buildings out of gold and then just donate that. So imagine someone makes 100 buildings made out of gold and then without any attachment to them, just donates it. How much fall would they get? Imagine.
No.
Right? So all these Greebs and all these people say, hey, take this. And they could take that golden mansion and even probably sell that and be sorted for life, right? So imagine someone creates those 100 golden mansions and just gives them without any attachment to them. In terms of the punna they would get from that, the fal they would get from that, it's going to be so much. And Bhai Gurdas Ji says that teaching someone one shabad, just one shabad, that's how much punna you get. So that punna, or that process of giving that vidya, is the duty of that person who obtains the vidya to not keep it to themselves but to spread it further. So Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji followed the bachan of Sant Giani Sundar Singh Ji. And Sant Giani Sundar Singh Ji's bachan was, till your last breath, you're going to teach this vidya now. And we see that in Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji's life, that even on the day that they passed away, they were teaching Singhs. So Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji, on the day that they passed away, which has just in the last few days, we've commemorated that day, Pandra Hard. So according to the Desi calendar, that was yesterday, according to the Desi calendar. So Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji, on the last day of their physical bodily life, Mahapurush did Katha 3 times. So they did the Amrit Villa, the Katha of Guru Granth Sahib Ji. They did the Dasam Bani Katha, Sri Dasam Granth Sahib Ji. And they did Surj Prakash Di Katha. And Surj Prakash Di Katha at that time, so the Guru Granth Sahib Ji Katha was in Basant Rag, and the Surj Prakash Katha at the time was Guru Gobind Singh Ji's Itihas, Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj's Vyah Prasang. So Mahapurush did that Katha, and I was listening to a Katha of Sant Kartar Singh the other day, where they talk about Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji. And Sant Giani Kartar Singh Ji, they say in that Katha that on that day, Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji did more Katha than usual. And they were going on for so long. And Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji, their health had become quite weak at that time. And Sant Kartar Singh Ji says that, I said to Mahapurush, Mahapurush, tusi ruk jo hun, like break kar lo, and we'll continue tomorrow. But Mahapurush know when they're going to go. And Mahapurush knew this is the last time I'm going to do Katha. And they say, Rajike unhone Katha ki thi, even more than usual. They did like half an hour or 45 minutes more than usual. So Mahapurush had such prem with the Katha till their last breath. One, that they were so immersed in that Katha. And second, that was the bachan of their Vidya Ustad, Sant Baba Sundar Singh Ji. And they followed that to the last breath. So Sant Giani Sundar Singh Ji's bachan, that until your breaths are finished, you have to keep teaching this Vidya. And Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji, from the day that Sant Sundar Singh Ji passed to the day that Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji passed away, so 15 hard, which is roughly 28th or 29th of June, depending on the year, according to the Desi calendar, because that changes a little bit. Mahapurush for 39 years, 4 months and 20 days. For this period of time, this routine that we're now going to talk about, imagine 39 years, 4 months, 20 days, not even one day was there, even a little bit of a break or a holiday. Like we can probably think about our lives and how much we have the need for some sort of break and rest, and we need that as well. But Mahapurush were different. And again, coming back maybe to that question as well, sometimes we can't try and do rees of Mahapurush as well. Rees means to copy their life, because Mahapurush have bakshish of Guru Sahib, and their life is such. In Gurbani says, Bhagata taisa sariya jod kade na aya. Right? The life of a sasari, someone who's involved in Maya, or someone who's immersed in Maya, someone whose goal is just obtaining loads of Maya or living a luxurious life in this world, they will understand the ways of the Bhagats. Because the ways of the Bhagats are not interested in the ways of Maya or the ways of the material world. And Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji's life, in their whole life, this routine, they followed it till the last day. There was no change in the routine. So we'll have a look at that routine now. So the first thing that Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji, their daily routine would start from 2 a.m. And Guru Ramdas Ji Maharaj Shabad, Gur Satgur Ka Jo Sikh Akhaye, that Shabad, we can see that in Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji's life. So 2 a.m., Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji would wake up. There was no alarms or anything like that in them days. Mahapurush was so pakka in their nijam of waking up Amrit Villa that at 2 a.m., regardless of their health, regardless of the weather or any other circumstance, 2 a.m. Mahapurush used to wake up. And as soon as they used to wake up, they used to say, Vaheguru, Vaheguru, Vaheguru 3 times. And Mahapurush had a gadavai, or we could just simply say a sevadar. Especially when Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji, later on in their life, they had a stroke as well, so they needed someone to help them. At that time, the gadavai Singh would bring a gadava. The gadava means like a water pitcher, and Sant Ji would do panjashnan. So panjashnan means just washing your face, your hands and your feet. And as soon as they had done panjashnan, they would sit back on their asan and they would just absorb into the Simran of Vaheguru. And that Simran, they would do 2 hours of Simran. So for 2 hours, from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m., Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji used to just absorb themselves into Simran. And then around 4 a.m., Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji, they used to then go and do Ishnan, do the Kirya, so all the different things we do in the morning that we need to, Datan, brushing our teeth, all these different things. Datan is Purane Gursikhs. Even now, many Nihung Singhs and Gursikhs, they won't use toothbrushes and things like that. They use Datan, which is from a tree. I think Nimda. It's a tree. The bark of that tree has a lot of properties which keep your teeth healthy. So Gursikhs used to use that. And after using that, they would just get rid of that Datan and they would use a new one every day. So it's fresh as well. So Mahapurush used to do Datan. They used to then do Ishnan. And after doing Ishnan, then they would come back to their asan. And once they used to get to their asan, they used to do their personal Nityanem. Their Nityanem is a very long Nityanem. It's a very amazing Nityanem that Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh used to do. Their personal Nityanem, kat to kat, what they used to do is the Panjabaniya Nityanem that we all do, that was part of the Nityanem. But then alongside that, Panjagranthi. So Panjagranthi, a lot of Pratan Gursikhs used to do Nityanem of Panjagranthi. And Panjagranthi has the Baniya of Sukhmani Sahib, Asadivar, Bhavanakari, Siddh Ghost, Dakhni Onkar, these sort of Baniya. And we could say they're like the main Bani a lot of Gursikhs read from Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj. And Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji had all this Bani memorized. So they didn't used to, at that time, when they were just after they had the Ishnan, they wouldn't read from a Gutka Sahib at that time. They would do it Kant. And during their Nityanem, this was just Mahapurusha's routine. They would do Kanga that whole time. So while they're doing their Nityanem, so this would be like half an hour to an hour, they would continuously do Kanga. Kanga means the wooden comb. And that Kanga, in their case and their Dada, they would keep on doing it. And there's a lot of benefits of actually doing Kanga. The Kanga, jada Kanga karna ya, Gursikha nu waise hukum ya, the hukum to Gursikhs is ke the Kanga should be done twice a day. So when we take Amrit, the Panj Pyare say this in the Ret, and it comes in the Ret name as well. That Kanga dono waqt kar, paag chune kar bande. That in your daily life, you should be doing Kanga twice a day.
Combing your hair.
Combing your hair. So combing your case twice a day, Kanga karna. Naale naal jeda dastar do vari sajauna. So a lot of Gursikhs, they'll tie their dastar twice. So a lot of people probably don't know this because they just do it once a day. And then another thing, don't take your dastar off just like a topi. You shouldn't do that. Chonne ke onu banna ya. Which means tie it afresh every day, twice a day. So there's Syane log, the old Gursikhs, their vichar, and even now in a lot of people in science and so on, they say that jeda Kanga karna, prane Gursikha da vichar si, that doing your Kanga for a long period of time, doing Kanga in your case, with a wooden Kanga especially, one, it makes the jada of your case mazboot. The second thing, it's a malish is off for your head. And if you think the amount of brain power that Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji is using, the amount of teaching they were doing, the amount of Katha they're doing, but those who do Katha, like you do Katha, Sukhdeep Singh, you know how much pressure you could say is of doing Katha for 1 hour. Right? This is a bachan that Mahapurush have done. That 1 hour of Katha is equal to like a 9-to-5 job. That's how much pressure or how much brain power is going into that Katha. So just doing one Katha, and Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh was doing like 3 Kathas a day, right? And then alongside teaching 3 Kathas or doing 3 Kathas, they're also teaching Singhs, Gurbani Santhia, they're teaching them other Granths. And then they're reading so much Bani, they're listening to so much Bani. So that's why they used to do this Kanga as well. And then there's like I've read things recently about the Kanga. Do you know about that?
About the like health benefits, the static energy, and it's meant to like neutralize the static or electricity or something.
So Mahapurush used to do that for like a good hour to hour and a half, however long their Nityanem was. They would keep doing Kanga while they're doing their Nityanem. So once they're done their Nityanem, they're done Kanga, then they would tie their dastar. And because their Nityanem was complete, then according to the Mausam, according to the season, they would either have jal or they would have lassi. They would have one of these things. After that, they'd go to the darbar and do Maharaj de Darshan. Going to the darbar, at that time, Asa Divar was going on. The Mahapurush would usually come into the darbar during the Kirtan of Asa Divar. And once they'd enter the darbar, done namaskar to Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, they would say Atabya and do Chaur Sahib of Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Once Asa Divar was complete, then Katha would start. So in Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji's daily life, there was 3 main Kathas that they would do. Mostly, at most points of their life, they would do 2 main Kathas. But then in between that, there's also another Katha that they would do. The Katha is you could say the exegesis or the explanation, the arth of Guru Granth Sahib Ji or any other Granth. Any scripture telling the meanings line by line of each Gurbani Pankti or the Ithas Pankti, that's Katha.
Anji.
So once Asa Divar would be completed, after that the Katha would start. And the Katha in the morning would always be of Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. So, Larivaar Katha, this is a word many people might have heard. Sometimes people get confused. What does Larivaar Katha mean? Does that mean like they're reading from a Larivaar Saroop or something like that? Larivaar Katha means, Larivaar simply means without break. Larivaar means continuous. Larivaar Katha means that Katha, which means that once you've finished a certain Shabad, the next day you're going to continue from the Shabad after that. That Katha is going to be continuous. Similar to a Sahaj part, but it's like a Katha, a Sahaj part. So that's what Larivaar Katha is. Larivaar Katha is the process of going through any Granth. It could be Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj. It could be Dasam Guru Granth Sahib Ji. It could be Sri Gur Pratap Suraj Granth, Panth Prakash, any Granth you can think of. If you go through that continuously from one point of time, starting from the start all the way to the end, you could do one Shabad a day, you could do one line a day, doesn't matter. That is called Larivaar Katha. And Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji in their life did many Larivaar Kathas, 27 I think that they did. So the Guru Granth Sahib Ji Katha they would do in the morning. That was the primary Katha that every Singh in the Jatha would attend that Katha. And at that time, Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji would sit at the Tabya. Tabya means the area behind Guru Granth Sahib Ji. The Pati Singh, which would usually be Ragi Bachittar Singh Ji. They would sit beside Sant Ji. Some days other Singhs used to sit as well. And they would do the Katha of Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. And all the Gursikhs who were there to learn that Katha, they would also come with their rails. Rails means the wooden stands for the pothiya, with their own pothiya, and they would sit in lines. So it'd be like a really long line in the darbar, all the Singhs sitting down. And you can imagine that scene, how amazing it would have been. Like hundreds of Singhs sitting down with their pothiya, all making notes. And they say during that time, Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji's attention was so quick. And you can even hear this in the Katha sometimes. Where sometimes some Singh might fall asleep or something like that. They would notice straight away. And they would say that to become savadhan, to become alert. So Mahapurush used to do the Katha. And that time of Katha, the Vidyarthis who talk about that Katha, that during that time, such an atmosphere used to be created in that darbar that it would almost be like it'd be hypnotic. And those who even hear the Katha of Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji now, they'll know that effect in Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji's voice is unparalleled in my own opinion. And you just get so much anand just listen to their voice. Then the actual vichar they're doing are just amazing, because you don't really hear that in a lot of Katha. Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji's Katha is very unique. There's no extra galla in there. There's no extra vichars. Every single vichar is related to the Pangti of Gurbani that they're doing Katha of. And all the Sakhiyan, all the Parmans means examples they might give from other Granths, from other religious, other scriptures of other religions, the Purans, even from the Islamic faith, all these different things. Each Parman they give, each word that they say in that Katha is related to the Gurbani Pangti. Because we hear nowadays a lot of the time, people say we're doing Gurbani Katha, or they might say that we're Katha Vachik. When you actually listen to their Katha, it's usually more of their own opinion, or more of other stories and other
random
stuff,
random anecdotes that they come up with, rather than actually focusing on the arth of that Gurbani. So Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji used to do the Katha, and the Katha used to be such that it was from many different angles. So those who used to learn Gurbani Katha, or learn the Katha of Guru Granth Sahib Ji at that time, they wouldn't just get one tika, like you can just read one tika of Gurbani and get the arth. They would get the arth from many, many different tikas at one time. So Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji, just at that point, without looking at any printed copy, they knew the arth that would come in every single tika.
Wow.
So Freedko tika, or Amritsar, the Gyanis of Amritsar, what arth would they do? Or Pandit Kartar Singh Dakha, many, many different Vidwans, Pandit Tara Singh Narotam, these are many great scholars. Sant Ji would give all the different takes or the different, because Gurbani is a Gadbodh.
Hanji.
We said this before. Gurbani is so deep, we can't ever say that one scholar is right in Gurbani Arth. Rather, we should look at all these different facets of Gurbani Arth, showing us how deep Gurbani actually is. There's probably like thousands of TK, Steek's translation of Japji Sahib.
Hanji.
There's so many out there. Read every single one, you'll get something new. You'll find something, you'll learn something new. That just shows how vast Gurbani is. And Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh used to give that to the students. The vastness of Gurbani, the arths, the focal point of that Katha was the arth taught by Sant Giani Sundar Singh Ji, the Sampradaya arth, which would be the arths which have been coming from the time of Guru Gobind Singh Ji. But alongside that, many other Vidwans, many scholars, their input or their scholarly commentaries, Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji used to give that to the Singhs as well. So the Singhs used to get very comprehensive understanding of Gurbani. The deeper arths, the intrinsic arths. For example, Majki Var, we hear like over 22 arths of just one Pangati, one Shabad. And even there, Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji says that, in fact, what I've given to you today, Sant Giani Sundar Singh Ji gave many more arths than this. But that which I remember I'm giving to you today. That means Gurbani is so vast.
Hanji.
So Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji used to do the Katha of Guru Granth Sahib Ji in the morning, and that used to last till about 9 a.m. After the Katha, all the Singhs would leave the Darbar Sahib, and then they would do Abhyas of that Katha. Abhyas is very important of what you've learned. If you're learning any sort of Vidya, if you don't do Abhyas of that, most likely we're not going to retain that information that we've learned.
What does it mean by doing Abhyas?
Abhyas, we could say, is doing practice of a Vidya. Anyone who learns any form of Vidya, any form of learning, they know that if I've taken a lesson, if I don't revise that lesson, if I don't make notes on that lesson, everything I've learned, for example, everything you've heard in a lecture at university, you've got to write down all them notes, but then after that lesson, you've got to take out time to actually sit down and understand them notes and go over them again and again until they reside inside you and you're confident that I understand what was told to me. And in Santhia, it's the same thing. Abhyas is a key point of Santhia. So the Singhs would then go and do Abhyas. They would split into little groups. Giani Preetam Singh Ji told me this, that their way of doing Abhyas was that all the Singhs would have little groups. And in them groups would be one Singh who's more senior, who'd probably heard the Katha of Guru Granth Sahib Ji one or more times. And they already had a very good grasp on the Katha, on the meanings of Guru Granth Sahib Ji. They would then listen to the other Singhs who were maybe more newer, and they would then go over the same Shabads that Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji did Katha of, and they would kind of do the Katha themselves and listen to each other doing the Katha. In that process, one, they'd get the practice of how to do Katha. Second, them arts which they just heard, it's like doing revision.
Yeah.
And the more Abhyas we do, Rasnagra Nisdin Vasa Jo Jal Niche Vas. There's a line in Sar Kutavli about Abhyas. Sahas Guna Vidya Vade Puna Puna Abhyas. That your Vidya, whatever learning you learn, whatever form of knowledge that you're learning, Sahas Guna means 1,000 times it increases. That Vidya you're learning, it will increase. The fall of that, the understanding of that Vidya, it will increase, it will multiply 1,000 times. Puna Puna Abhyas. Puna Puna means again and again. By doing Abhyas, by practicing that Vidya again and again, again and again. There's a famous saying, practice makes perfect.
Hanji. Right?
The more practice you do, the more you're going to get to that stage where you're very confident in what you've learned and you understand what you've learned. Rasnagra nisdin vasa jo jal niche vas. In the same way that water always comes to reside at a low surface. You look at a mountain, the water always goes it flows downwards. And it goes to the lowest surface and it resides there. In the same way that all that water becomes collected there, like lakes, so many such large quantities of water. Rasanagra nisdin vasa. In the same way, rasanagra. So that would split that. Rasana agra. Meaning agra means in front. Rasana is our tongue. That in the same way that vidya comes to reside, nisdin, day and night. The nis is night, day, din is day.
Hanji.
So day and night, it comes to reside on our tongue. Right. So the same way that water goes and resides wherever there's low surface, in the same way that vidya resides on our tongue. That means anytime we need to access that vidya, it's there for us because we've done a vyas of it. It's like saving it inside yourself, right? It's saving it in your memory. And that vidya is there for you to access. Now, if you take Santhya of Guru Granth Sahib Ji, you take Santhya of Sambani and you never read it again. Let's say you're taking the Santhya, meaning that the Ustad has told you, put the Vishram here. This is all the different ways of pronouncing this word. This word. This is the correct pronunciation of this word.
Hanji.
So you've taken all that Santhya, but you've never practiced it. And a year later, someone says to you, have you taken Santhya of this Bani? Or can you do Hukumnama Sahib? Can you read it? And you read it and it's like you never took that Santhya.
Hanji.
Whereas someone who's done a bias of that Santhya, when they actually go and read that Bani, that Vishrams, the pauses, the Ucharan, it just pargats, it just manifests by itself. Because subconsciously they've retained that information.
And for those that read Gurbani then, or who do take Santhya, what is the recommended number for those people of times to be asked?
In Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh's time, in the Taksal, the students were made to repeat that Santhya at least 25 times.
Okay.
So this is talking about the part of Gurbani.
Hanji.
So when you would learn part Santhya, so there's different types of Santhya. There's part di Santhya, there's artha di Santhya. So in the part Santhya especially if you're learning Larivaar, where all the words, the shabads of Gurbani are joint, then you know that it's, you need to do abhyas.
Hanji.
And if you don't do that abhyas, it's very hard to read Larivaar. So the Gursikhs the Vidyarthis would repeat that Santhya 25 times. Kat to kat. That's the minimum number. And more than that, if Gursikhs had Ichha, they would do even more abhyas.
Hanji.
So the Gursikhs would go into them little groups and do their abhyas of Santhya. And then that Gursikh who had more experience, who was like the leader of that group, they would then correct the Singhs where they would make some sort of mistakes. Some of the Singhs in the Jatha would also write the whole arths that Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji would say. So those Singhs were, for example, Sant Giani Mohan Singh Ji, Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji, there's other Singhs as well. They would write all the arths. You can imagine if you listen to the Katha and you can try it yourself, everything Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji is saying is very hard to write that.
Hanji.
Giani Preetam Singh Ji also wrote all the arths, and I've seen them notebooks and the detail that they've written them in. And they're writing that while Sant Ji is doing the Katha.
Hanji.
It's amazing how they did that. So the Gursikhs, who were the students at that time after 9 a.m., they would go outside and they would either in their rooms or mostly, Giani Ji said they would sit outside and in their little groups they would do abhyas. Now, what was Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji doing during that time? That period was something in Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji's life that they kept this time as their personal time with Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj. So no other Singhs used to be in the Darbar at that time. Only maybe one or two Sevadars. And Sant Mahapurush used to sit at the Tabya of Guru Granth Sahib Ji and they would read Gurbani wherever the ang was of Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Many times they would just sit there and let's say the Shabad, the Mangal of Guru Granth Sahib Ji. So Mangal means that the invocation, Ik Oankar Satguru Prasad. And if Ik Oankar had come at the beginning of that Shabad, sometimes they would just sit there for 1 hour and just keep repeating Ik Oankar, Ik Oankar. And they would get so absorbed into that Shabad. Wherever the Gurbani was, they would do abhyas and they would read Gurbani of Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj. From the time of completing the Katha to doing part from Guru Granth Sahib Ji, during that time, Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji would not allow anyone to talk with them. Because during Katha, there's a ras, Ras means a bliss, a certain type of anand, bliss that you get doing that katha. And to retain that katha, because you can imagine, for example, when you go to the Guru Kar, you go to the Gurdwara Sahib, and you're in a samagam, or you've listened to katha, and after listening to that kirtan or katha, your mind is so attuned to Guru Sahib, and you have no distraction. But as soon as you leave the darbar and you might meet some of your friends, and you start talking about other galla, that anand which he had in the darbar, it might not be the same level just in the langar hall, right? And Mahapurush knew that as soon as Singhs start talking about other things or they start asking other questions, that ras of the katha is not going to remain. So during that time, they wouldn't let anyone talk to them. And that ras would just increase because they would get so much ras out of doing that katha. They would get so much anand, bliss from doing the katha. Then that bliss would then increase doing the Nitnem from Guru Granth Sahib Ji, reading Bani from Guru Granth Sahib Ji. So where they would do wherever Guru Granth Sahib Ji was Prakash, they would read Bani. Then they would also do Sahaj Path. They would do about 50 yangs every day. That was a nizam, that was a rule in their life, that every single day they would do about 50 yangs of Path from Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Once they had completed their part, then Sant Mahapurush would stand up and holding the Chaur Sahib, they'd start doing Chaur Sahib. This is a very beautiful thing in their life, that when they were doing Chaur Sahib over Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj, they would say, Tan Guru Nanak, Main Tera Haan, Main Tera Haan, Main Tera Haan. They would say it 3 times. Tan Guru Nanak Dev Ji, I am yours, I am yours, I am yours. Then they would say, Tan Guru Angad Dev Ji, Main Tera Haan, Tan Guru Amardas Ji, Main Tera Haan. So this act of devotion or surrendering to Guru Sahib, that mera mujh mein kish nahi, jo kish hai so tera. Guru Granth Ji maniye pragat Guran ki deh. Recognizing Guru Granth Sahib Ji as the saroop of das Pashahiyan. Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji at that time, looking towards Guru Granth Sahib Ji, doing Chaur Sahib and Guru Granth Sahib Ji, they're doing benti to Guru Granth, each Guru Sahib, because Guru Granth Sahib Ji is the form of all das Pashahiyan. The Pratak Swaroop, Dasan Pashahiyan this Swaroop, we say that every day in the Ardas. And practically, they're surrendering themselves to each Guru Sahib in front of Guru Granth Sahib Ji. That, oh Guru Nanak Dev Ji Maharaj, I am yours. Guru Angad Dev Ji Maharaj, I am yours. And they will go through all the das Pashahiyan. And that process of Guru Nanak Dev Ji Maharaj to Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj, saying each name of the Guru Sahibs and saying Main Tera Haan, Main Tera Haan, Main Tera Haan, that would take them about half an hour. And they'd say it with so much prem. So I could probably say that in 10 minutes maybe and rush through it. But they would say it with so much prem, it would take them half an hour. And during that time, they'd be doing the Chaur Sahib as well, over Guru Granth Sahib Ji. So once they had done Chaur Sahib and the job of Dasa Pasha and their naam, then they would do Ardas, do Matha Take. Then Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji would keep on doing Parkarma of Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Parkarma means where we walk around Guru Granth Sahib Ji. And Parkarma is showing that Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj is the center of our life. That for us, our life revolves around Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Wherever our take means our focus point, where we go to, whether it's happiness, whether it's khushiyan, whether it's gami, whether it's happiness or sadness, we go to Guru Granth Sahib Ji. So Mahapurush would do Parkarma again and again. Bhai Gurdas Ji says that the charan of those Gursikhs who walk around their Guru, do Parkarma of their Guru, those charan are truly blessed. And Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji would do at least 13 Parkarma. 13 in the sense that Tera, again coming down to Tan Guru Nanak, Main Tera Haan, I am yours. And then this 13 is representing that, oh Guru Granth Sahib Ji, I am yours. I'm yours, I'm yours, again and again. And Gursikhs also say, those few Gursikhs who would have been in the Darbar at that time, they say that when Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji was doing Chaur Sahib and repeating the names of the Guru Sahibs in such prem and surrendering themselves to the Gurus, to Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj, at that time, there'd be such a glow on Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji's face. Punjabi ਵਿੱਚ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਕਿ ਪੂਰੀ ਲਾਲੀ ਚੜੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਸੀ ਮਹਾਪੁਰਸ਼ਾਂ ਦੇ ਮੁਖ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ There was a glow. There was a aura, you could say, at that time, which was unexplainable.
Hanji.
Sant Giani Sundar Singh Ji actually said once to Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji that I know that you like just having all the time away from people and spending it in Simran, which we say Ekant da sama. Ekant means where you're not disturbed by the outside world and you can just devote that time absorbing yourself in Samadhi in Simran. Sant Sundar Singh Ji said to Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji that I know you like spending all your time in Ekant, but your life has been made to do Gurbani Prachar. And you're going to be surrounded by hundreds of Singhs at all times. So the way for you to have Ekant is that every single day, spend this time with Guru Granth Sahib Ji by yourself. So this was like where Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji would do the Ekant da Bhajan, where they'd be undisturbed by the outside world. And every single day, Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji would do darshan of Guru Granth Sahib Ji, regardless of where they were. Doing darshan of Guru Granth Sahib Ji for them was paramount. And even where we hear about where Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji was in journeys as well, then let's say they were in a train journey, because we're going to hear later about them going to many different places in India, as far as Calcutta, Bombay. Mahapurush would, in the train, do benti to the Singhs, do Prakash of a Puthi Sahib, of a Sant Ji Sahib, so one part of Guru Granth Sahib Ji, and they would do darshan of the Gurbani. Only then would they then have prashadda. So that was their nijam in their life. So after that personal nitnem, that personal time with Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj, then, only then would Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji have langar. We can see already how much they were doing. So they've had Ishnan, they've done so much nitnem, they've read so much Bani by themselves on their asan. Then they've done Katha, they've listened to Asadivar, they've done Katha, they've done their personal nitnem or reading Gurbani from Guru Granth Sahib Ji, they've done Chaur Sahib and Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Now they'll have some langar. And then after having langar, then Shote Granth, which is the small philosophical granths, which Singhs would read when learning Katha, Sant Ji would teach them to the Singhs. And as they got older, this duty was given mainly to Sant Niranjan Singh Ji Vaid Ji. So earlier on in Sant Ji's life, they would teach this themselves, but then later on, the other Singhs would also teach this. So after that time, around an hour's time, if it was the summertime, because the summertime is longer days, Sant Ji would rest for about 1 hour. If it was the winter time, there was no time to rest. So straight after teaching the Shote Granth, the philosophical Granths, for example, Sar Kutavali, Vichar Mala, Adhyatam Prakash, Pavar Samrit, these sort of Granths. After teaching these small Granths, then it would be time to do the evening Katha. The time has gone so fast. Time to do the evening Katha. And the evening Katha, Mahapurush would do Itihasadi Katha mainly. Now, sometimes during the day, if there was a Katha of Sri Dasam Granth Sahib Ji, that would be done during the daytime. So you can imagine now, the timetable, it wasn't, obviously, this is the rough timetable. In between that, there will be adjustments to fit other Kathas as well. So when Singhs wanted to learn the Arth of Sri Dasam Granth Sahib Ji, then Mahapurush would also fit that during the day. So we do Larivaar Katha, teach the Singhs the Katha of Dasam Bani as well. Sometimes Singhs might do benti, you want to learn Bhai Gurdas Ji's Vara, and we want to learn the Kabits, and that would be done during the day as well. So the daytime, set and slot between the evening Katha and Sant Ji's rest, they would teach either Bhai Gurdas Ji's Vara, the Kabits Savaiye, so meaning the literature, the Bani of Bhai Gurdas Ji. They would teach Dasam Bani Katha. And then after that, it would start the evening Katha. The evening Katha was always Itihasadi Katha. So we see this now in Gurdwara across the world. All the Takhat Sahibs, in the morning, there's always Guru Granth Sahib Ji di Katha or Hukumnama Sahib di Katha. And in the evening, there's always Itihasadi Katha. Mostly Gur Pratap Suraj Granth. Mahapurush mostly taught Gur Pratap Suraj Granth. And because Gur Pratap Suraj Granth is such a long Granth, it would take a long time to go through that Granth. Once they had completed that Katha of Gur Pratap Suraj Granth, the Singhs would do benti that Mahapurush teach us Panth Prakash, Bhai Ratan Singh Pangu, or Giani Gyan Singh, or Gurbilas, all these Granths, then Mahapurush would teach them as well. But mostly, the Katha would be of Suraj Prakash, of Kavi Santokh Singh Ji. Now, these two kathas, Mahapurush would do them in such depth. It wasn't like a very brief katha where you just get a very simple arth of them, meanings of Gurbani or Tahas. Mahapurush would do it in a way where those students who are learning that katha, they would get as much depth of information as possible. So after that katha was completed, from the journey from the Darbar Sahib to the Asan, so you could say maybe 5 to 10 minutes. In that time, that was like a free time when Singhs knew that if we have any question that we might want to ask Mahapurush or any other thing to do with the Jatha, then we can quickly ask Mahapurush. Now we're seeing how compact, how filled Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji's day was.
Sounds very busy.
There was no time for villa to be villa. Like we have times where we're just chilling most of the day. Their life, their daily timetable was so packed. So during that time, Singhs might have questions to ask. And they could ask it while they were walking towards the asan. But once they used to sit on the asan, asan means like their bed where they used to rest. Once they would sit there, during that time, more Nitnem of Gurbani used to start. More recitation of Gurbani used to start. And then no one could talk to Mahapurush because they would want to listen to that Gurbani and they wouldn't want any disturbance in listening of they wouldn't want any disturbance in the listening of that Gurbani. And Mahapurush had this nijam in their life, this rule, or you could say this discipline in their life, that every single day they would do nitnem of Panj Baniya, Panj Granthi, many other Baniya. For example, Mahapurush used to listen to Akal Ust, they used to read Akal Ustat, Teti Savaiye, Shabd Hazare, Patta De Savaiye, Barah Maha, many Baniya. They used to read themselves in the morning. Then in the evening, they used to put the duty of a Singh that the Nitnem that I've done in the morning, that I've read myself, now repeat that Nitnem and sunai it to me. And the reason for this actually comes in Sant Mahapurush's Jeevan, that when Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji was younger, they used to do 5 Nitnems a day. So we find it hard to do the Panj Baniya in the morning. They would repeat that 5 times every single day alongside all the other Nitnem of doing Panj Granthi and doing many Sukhmani Sahibs, doing many Japji Sahibs. Alongside that, they would repeat their Panj Baniya, the Nitnem Diya Baniya, 5 times a day, alongside 5 Rera Sahib, 5 Sohila Sahib. And when Sant Giani Sundar Singh Ji saw this, they asked Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji, why do you do this? And Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji did benti, and the Singhs also asked this, and Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji would say this to the Singhs as well, that in my life, if in my childhood, because obviously there's that time in your life where you don't do Nitnem because you haven't learned it yet. You're a child. There's that point in your life you might be very ill and you might not be able to do your Nitnem when you're a child or you're younger and you don't have your Nitnem Kant. Sant Mahapurush said that in my life, if I've ever missed any Nitnem, I'm making up for that now. I don't want that when I go to Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj, that they say, Gurbachan Singh, to inne din to Nitnem nahi kita. That every single day, Nitnem mera pura hove. And Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji used to say this in their Katha. I was listening to this yesterday actually. They said that just doing one Nitnem, when we do Nitnem once, Panjabaniya, we recite the Panjabaniya with Prem, that removes many thousands of paps of our Pishle Janams. So it's very important to do our Nitnem every day. The Sant Mahapurush should say, I want to make up for every single day that I might have missed. And Sant Giani Sundar Singh Ji said that you're learning Vidya, and in the learning of Vidya, you need to spend time doing Abhyas. So Sant Sundar Singh Ji said, instead of doing 5 Nitnems a day, do it twice. In the morning, do your Nitnem yourself. In the evening, listen to it from a Singh. In this way, even the other Singhs, their pala will happen. Because they'll get to read Bani. And where you're doing your own pala, you'll do Parupakar. You'll help other people as well by making them read Bani. And we see this in the life of many Mahapurush. Baba Thakur Singh Ji, we hear about in their life, those Gursikhs who did Sangat, they say that at all times there'll be a Singh, always with a Gutka Sahib, on a higher level, reading Bani. And whatever Singh would recite Bani to Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji, Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji had a platform made higher than their own bed out of the respect of Gurbani. And the Vishai for that Singh who was going to read Bani was better than the Vishai that they would sit on. So they'd make sure that they're higher, they're more comfortable because they're going to read Bani. That was the satkar they had that's the respect they had for Gurbani. So in the evening, Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji used to listen to the whole of the Panj Baniya again, Asa Diwar, Sukhmani Sahib, Barah Maha, Patta De Savaiye, Akal Ustat, and all this we could say from like 6, 7 p.m. all the way till 10:30 p.m. They would keep listening to Bani. And once they'd finished that, then they would have their prashadda. So they listened to that Nityanem, then they would have prashadda. And during that time between the prashadda and when they were going to Kirtan Sohila, then any Singh would come. If they had any question about any arth of Gurbani, while Mahapurush were doing Katha, it might be that they might have heard some concept that they didn't fully grasp and they wanted to confirm what it was. Then the Singhs would come and they would ask their questions. At 11 p.m., Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji would do Kirtan Sohila Sahib. And once they had done Kirtan Sohila, they wouldn't do bhajan with anyone. They would rest at that point, and we could say about 3 hours of rest. And again, it comes down to that point that the chal bhagta ki chal nirali. Now, we get inspiration from this, and this gives us the inspiration that kat to kat, at least we should wake up at Amrit Vela. At least we should do our Kirtan Sohila. We should do our Rera Sahib every day at least. And then on top of that, build our Nityanem. But first, at least let's do our Amrit Vela, our Rera Sahib, our Kirtan Sohila Sahib. And Mahapurush in their life, they never had any naga. Naga means any, what do you say naga in English? Disturbance. Never once in their life was there any disturbance in their Nityanem. Now, sometimes we find a lot of excuses. I'm ill today, or this problem, I can't do my Nityanem today. But Mahapurush, their timing of the Nityanem is all, they never let any fark. Now, sometimes I hear of some things, they're doing their eras like 11 p.m. or something, they're doing their eras because they forgot to do it, or they're just busy doing other things. But Mahapurush had a nizam and they had a discipline in their life, and that discipline never got loose ever in their life. So only then they had about 3-4 hours of rest. And we're talking about in their life, their whole life, they're dedicated to Gurbani Prachar, they're dedicated to reading Bani and then applying that Bani into their life practically to the level that Main Gurbani Adar hai, Gurbani Lag Rahao. Their support was Gurbani, and they became the form of Gurbani. They merged with Gurbani. The Bachan of Guru Sahib, Satgur Bachan Kamavane, Sacha Iho Vichar, was truly contemplating Guru Sahib's Bachan is kamaying the Bachans of Guru Sahib. And again, we said, why do we call them Mahapurush? Because they've actually kamad the Bachan. They've actually practically lived the life that Gurbani tells us. And we see that in Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji's life. So the Singhs didn't understand how Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji did it. Even now, when you read these Jeevanis, or you can talk to the students of Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji, they say, we didn't understand how they actually led this life where they had such little rest. And that life that they led, armed person, again, this comes down to the Bakshis of Guru Sahib as well, that these Gursikhs sent by Maharaj, they have a certain Bakshis of Guru Sahib as well to do this. A normal person can't do it. It's very hard to live this life. Again, as I said, the inspiration we should take, maybe we can't emulate this. Again, that question came. Maybe we can't get to this level. That's not the point. The point should be that seeing how much Mahapurush did, we should think, do we at least do the bare minimum? Why are we being lazy in doing the bare minimum of our Nityanem when Mahapurush were doing so much? And they never let a Naga come in their life. They never had a day off from their Nityanem or doing any of these things. Why do we think we should have days off from doing our Nityanem? Or why should we think that we should have days off from having darshan of Maharaj or any point in Gursikhi, in our Maryada? We have a lot of excuses.
Definitely. And just looking at this whole routine then from like literally 2 a.m. in the morning till 11 p.m. at night, one key thing that stands out is the respect Mahapurush had for Gurbani. And just one Pankti that comes to mind is the Jinpe Adam na Bani Tara Jano Sosika Nahi Hamara. That one who doesn't have fear for Gurbani or respect for Gurbani. Things by Guru Hari Sahib Ji Maharaj just said they're not a Sikh of mine. So you can see that one who does have respect for Gurbani and that fear, then they are a Sikh of Guru Sahib Ji, right? And even that point you made about when Mahapurush should put them on a higher ascent than themselves who be reading the part. So then you have examples of Mahapurush showing this respect for Gurbani. Maybe when they're traveling or just any other examples, Ji?
So the Jatha would always travel on foot. Later on, when Mahapurush started to go to places such as Calcutta, Bombay, then they used trains.
Okay.
But in Punjab especially, the first Gurtam Yatra that Sant Ji did, they did it on foot to Hazur Sahib. So in that process, we've got to remember, we call the Jatha of Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji a traveling university, right? Because the depth of what they're learning is amazing, but they're traveling and learning. So usually when you're staying in a Vidyallah, that's quite easy in the sense where you're staying in one place, your Santhya's in one place every day. You don't need to worry about traveling. But where Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji was teaching Singhs, their other mission was to join as many people to Gurbani and Amrit Prachar, the Prachar of getting people to leave Nashe, to leave lifestyles where they were alcoholic, where they were taking drugs, where they were doing many actions which the Gurbani and Arayat has told us that these will take us towards a downward spiral. Those which will bring negativity into our life. Mahapurush, in their life, they want to join as many people to Gurbani and do as much pala, parupakar. Janam maran duhu mein nahi jan par upakari hai. So their whole life is dedicated to do parupakar. Their life isn't really for themselves. They recognize that this life I've been given is to help others. So if Mahapurush just stayed in one place, they knew that I'm not going to be able to create the maximum effect and join as many people to Gurmat. So they were Chakravarti in the same way that the Nihang Singh's Buddha Dal is Chakravarti. That's the same reason really. Because why was Buddha Dal Chakravarti? Why was the Dalpant, the Nihang Singhs, why are they Chakravarti? Because they would go from village to village and doing prachar, showing the lifestyle of a Khalsa, inspire people to take Amrit. And people would take Amrit from them. Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji had the same mission. They were Chakravarti Jatha. On foot, they would go from Pind to Pind. And Mahapurush especially would go to them areas where people won't have access, that the same level where in Shehra, maybe in towns and so on, people have more access to Guru cars and so on. Those places where no one would go, Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh would make sure, let's go there to join them people to Gurbani. Because in Shehrs, for example, take Sri Amritsar Sahib, Fatehgarh Sahib, all these major asthans, you have many asthans there. You had many other Gursikhs doing prachar there. Those Gursikhs were very lucky. They had access to so many Sant Mahapurush coming to them. But what about the Pinds? What about those villages where there were so many Gursikhs, but they never had many prachariks coming there? So Mahapurush had that mission. Let's go to them places as well. And going to Pinds, imagine they've got a jatha of sometimes 100 to 150 Singhs with them. Every single Singh had their own luggage. Every Singh had their own pothiyan. Every Singh had their own notebooks. Every Singh had their own rela. So many things.
It's a lot of stuff.
A lot of things. You can imagine 150 Singhs times 150 pothiyan, right? Rela, kapde.
And they're traveling by foot as well.
Yeah. So what the Singhs would do, they had a few carts. The carts were there mostly for the luggage. The horses, do tin kode hunde sige, they would either pull the carts or there'd be one or two kode, which would be for the Buzurg. Because there were some Singhs in the Jatha who were really old and they couldn't walk. So there'd be a few kode for them. Those who were Jawan, those who were no Jawan, meaning they were young, they would walk on foot. Now Mahapurush, from the start of their life to the end of their life, as much as they could, they would walk. Towards the end of their life became difficult because they had a stroke. But for the vast majority of their life, they walked on foot from Pind to Pind. And during that time, this is coming to the point about respect of Gurbani. Some of the Singhs would do benti to Mahapurush, Mahapurush, why don't you sit on the horse? Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji would say, Pehli gal, there's many elders here. Right? For example, there's Baba Tanna Singh Ji in the Jatha, very old. They do so much seva on the Jatha. And Mahapurush would say that instead of putting me on the horse, put this Buzurg on there. So one was their respect for the elders, but then another point comes is the respect for Gurbani. And there's a story that comes around 1950 where Sant Giani Kartar Singh Ji, they did benti. Their pind was Pura Kona, that was their pind. And they did benti ke Mahapurusho tusi sade pind no uthe aake aap ji prachar karo, do prachar in my village. And Mahapurush, when they reached the rail station, the train station, I think it was Rattoke, that's where they reached. And all the Singhs had come to collect Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji. And especially they had got a horse, the horse for Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji to sit on to the pind. So from that train station to the pind. And Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji refused to sit on it.
Mm.
And they walked that whole way, which was quite a long way from the train station to the pind. And the Singhs did binti, they kept saying, Mahapurush, we've especially brought this horse for you to sit on. Why don't you sit on it? And Mahapurush said that, how can I sit on the horse when this whole Jatha, all these Singhs, all these Singhs are the roop of Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj. How can I sit higher than them? Right? That every single one of them is a Khalsa. Every single one of them is Parpak in their Rath. And that person who is Parpak in their Rath, Guru Gobind Singh Ji says, Khalsa mero roop hai khas. Pehla ta sare Singh Khalse ya, ye sare satkarj ho gaya. Dusri gal, inna vicho kai Singh, imagine you're walking all that time. What were the Singhs doing during that time? They weren't talking with each other. They were all reading Gurbani. And we all know that when a Singh is reading Gurbani, we shouldn't sit higher than them.
Anji.
And all them Singhs, many of them are doing Gupta Jaap of Gurbani. Sant Gurbachan Singh said, all these Singhs are reading Bani. How can I sit higher than them? Then the third thing they said, many of these things have khajane. So Prat and Gursikhs, the side bag, you could say, that Singhs used to carry is called a khajana, a treasury. Why was it a treasury? Because there used to be poti sahib in there. And the Singhs in a khajana would have all their potiyan. Some of them would have their own personal gutke sahibs. Sant Ji would say that these Gursikhs, they're holding Gurbani gutka sahibs with them. I can't say higher than them. So that's the point we can see that any of us, we would say, we would just go and sit on the horse. Right? Because we know this is a really long journey. I can't put that kechal on my body. I can't put that stress on my body. But Mahapurush would put the respect of Gurbani over their own worries about their body, right? Their health.
Their own comfort.
Their comfort. They didn't care about that. Their primary thing was, how do we give the maximum respect to Gurbani? Because they knew that Maharaj's khushiyan are in doing satkar of Gurbani.
Anji.
So once Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji, they were on the way back from Calcutta on the train. And they said this bachan to Sant Kartar Singh Ji, that they said that the satkar that the Sangat shows us, they said that to think that the satkar, the respect people give me, is because of this body of mine, it's a pap, they said, to think that. They said it's a sin to think that the respect people are giving to me is because of this body. They said the only reason they're respecting us, or they're giving me any respect, is because of Maharaj's Bani and their Bana. If I wasn't wearing this Bana, if I wasn't doing prachar of Maharaj's Bani, no one would respect me.
Anji.
So they said, we wear the Bana of the Guru and we read the Bani of the Guru. That's why in our life, the main priority of our life is the respect of Gurbani. If we're anything, it's because of Gurbani. And if we can't do satkar of Gurbani, then everything we're doing, it holds no value.
Anji.
So that's why in Mahapurush's life, they said that if we're anything today, it's because of Gurbani. That's why the satkar of Gurbani is a priority.
So just when you're speaking about Mahapurush's Jeevani and the idea of them having so much respect for Gurbani, another key quality that comes to mind is a humility amongst the students that they had as well, and just the way they would speak about Guru Granth Sahib Ji and about Gurbani as well. And I know there's many stories that illustrate their humility as well. One specifically is when some of the Gursikh, so there was like a darbar that was taking place where they were reciting poetry, and somebody had actually written a poem for Sant Ji as well, right?
So the old Singhs would write poetry. As I said in the last episode as well,
Hanji.
that kala or that talent or that interest in writing Gurmukhi poetry, especially in the shands, for example, Savaiya and Dohare and Kabits, all these shands that we hear in the Puratan Granths, we don't really see that a lot nowadays.
Nope.
But in Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh's time, their own students used to write poetry in really comprehensive Braj Pasha.
Hanji.
Right, the same language you'll find in like even Gurbani and Dasambani and Kavi Santok Singh Ji's Granths and so on. So there's a time when all the Vidyarthis of Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji, they had written poems about Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji in the praise of Sant Ji's life. And without asking Sant Ji one day, in the darbar after the Katha, there's a samagam happening. And one of the singers got up and they started to read this poem. Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji, just before the Singh had started reading that poem, they'd heard from some of the Singhs that Mahapursho, aa jehda Singh hega, ine aap ji bare ek kavita likhi hai. That this Singh has written a poem about you. When Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji heard that, usi waqt they matha tekte Guru Granth Sahib Ji and they left the darbar. Because they did not like their upma being done in any form. Usually what we hear or what we see in the world is that when someone's doing our praise, we love to hear about it. Right? They say, jado koi saadi upma karda si phul jande ya. We become inflated. Our ego becomes inflated hearing people praise us. But Mahapurush would never like to hear their own praise. And they walked out of the darbar. But that Gursikh he read this poem, and the poem is really beautiful.
Hanji.
And there's one kabit I'll read from that. There's like quite a few kabits. I'll read one of the kabits. Vidya ke sagar hai, jagat ujagar hai, gunan ke agar hai, rahat moh faas hai. So Giani Karnail Singh, he's written this and he says that Vidya ke sagar hai, Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji is the ocean of Vidya, of knowledge. Jagat ujagar hai, in the whole world, that ujagar means that their glory is manifest in the whole world. Everyone knows who Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji is. Gunan ke agar hai, and they're the treasury of qualities. All the qualities, the divine qualities, Sat, Santok, Daya, Dharam, Vichar, all these different qualities, we can see that in Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji. They're a treasury of qualities. Rahat moh faas hai. And the fasi means the noose of attachment of moh. They're rahat from that. That means that they're free from that. They've got no attachment. Then they say, Asan basan vidya ko daan det chit ke udar date naam abhyas hai. Anyone who comes into the jatha, Mahapurush gives them asan, basan and vidya. These three things. Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji not only gave the students the gift of Brahm Vidya, the priceless gift of the knowledge of Vaheguru, the divine knowledge of Vaheguru, of Gurbani, Mahapurush also looked after all their needs, whether that was their clothes, whether that was their whatever needs they needed for their body, their medicines, their potiyan, their bastar, their clothes. Asan basan. Asan means their food, basan means their bastar. Any Singh who came to the jatha, it didn't feel like they had any kami. Mahapurush would look after everything. More than themselves, they would look after the Singhs. Asan basan vidya ko daan det chit ke udar. Chit ke udar is something we'll go through later. Is that they had no attachment to money. In fact, whatever money came to them, they just handed it out to the Singhs. Whatever money came to them, they put into the seva. Whatever money would come, they gave it to Guru Kars. So chit ke udar means having a nature which is always giving.
Hanji.
And date naam abhyas hai. As we said before, jaisi sangat taisi rangat. If you're going to do sangat of a naam abhyasi, your naam abhyas is going to increase.
Hanji.
In the same way, those who do sangat of Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji, their naam abhyas increases. If you're nimrata mithas mano rasna pehtam kino. Amazing line. They say that, know this, that nimrata means humility, and mithas, sweetness. They have made their house their permanent place of residence of Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji's tongue. Their tam means house. meaning that a house is somewhere where we reside. No? So simply what this is saying is that Nimrata and Mithas are always residing in Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji. Their bol, the way they speak, is full of humility and sweetness.
Hanji.
Sada prafulla chit nahi gam pasa hai. And their chit, their outlook to life is always prafullat, means they're always in kheda, means they're always in a state of anand. Nanak bhagta sada vigas. The bhagats are always in the state of anand. They're always praful, their chit is always praful, nahi gam pas hai. And even when their bodily pains, even when they might have some bodily pain, they might have some illness, even then they're in a state of anand. Sadness never comes near to them. Even in times of pain, jo nar dukh mein dukh nahi manna. Sukh sne aur pay nahi jaake. Guru Tegh Bahadur Maharaj gives the definition of what a Brahma Gyani is there. And Mahapurush, you can read this in their Jeevani, many times when they had many illnesses even come, they would never complain about them. They would still do Katha, they would still follow that Nityanem. They would never let that come as a barrier to their Nityanem or their love for Guru Sahib. The last lines, they said, Anugraha Niket Har, Dijiya Gyana Dhyan, Taru Bhav Nid Amb Das Ardas. So Gyani Karnail Singh Ji wrote that Mahapurusho, Das da Ardas, this is my Ardas to Guru Sahib. Anugraha Niket Har. Anugraha Niket. Anugraha means love, prem. Niket means house, the house of love, Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji. And that just shows if the Vidyarthi of Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji is saying that, how much prem must have Sant Ji given to the Singhs for them to say that they're the house, they're the treasury of love. Anugraha Niket Har Dijiya Gyan Dan. Bless me with this Gyan of Brahm Gyan, of Gurbani da Gyan. So they're doing benti that Sant Ji, as you're teaching us, keep teaching us. You know? Taru Bhavanid Ambadas Ardas. And then to Vahiguru, Gyani Karnail Singh Ji does this Ardas, that, oh Vahiguru, take me across this ocean of Maya. So hearing this, this is just one kabit. There's so many other kabits that he kept reading. And after that, Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji came back into the Darbar. So all that point, they refused to stay in the Ardas, but the Singhs were stubborn and they said, we're going to read this Kavita. But Sant Ji wasn't happy with it. And we can see there that nowadays, if someone reads a Kavita in our Upama, we'll probably sit there and listen to it and get really happy and bask in our glory of how people are doing our praise. We love hearing our praise. Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji had no interest in hearing their own praise. And they would say to the Singhs that in the Darbar, only do praise of Guru Sahib. Although sometimes the Singhs are a bit stubborn and they did this Kavita in praise of Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji. And then afterwards, Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji calls Gyani Karnail Singh Ji to the room. And they say that bring that paper that you had these Kavitas written on. Afterwards, because Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji didn't really listen to the Kavita because they left. So they didn't really know what Gyani Karnail Singh had said. So they asked them for the paper and they read through all the Kavitas. And afterwards, Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji said that what did he gain praising one person? Tenu ki milya ek bande di, ek aam manukh. So Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji said, I'm just a normal human being. What have you gained praising just an ordinary human being? If you praised Sri Guru Sahib Ji, if you praised any of the Guru Sahib, if you praised Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji while writing this Kavita would have been amazing. Right? That you've written this Kavita so good, but why have you praised me? You should have praised Guru Sahib. They said that if you had written this poem in the praise of Satguru Ji, one, you would have got the happiness of Guru Sahib, and second, this Kavita would have been the best Kavita because it's written so good. So Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh did two things there. One, they showed the humility. They taught the Singhs that in the Darbar of Guru Sahib, we should only do the praise of Guru Sahib. And also, in a way, they also gave that Singh a bit of a honsala that the poem I've written is good as well. So they taught the Singh, but at the same time, they gave them prem as well. And Gyani Ji, that Singh who wrote that poem, they were so happy. So they asked Maafi from Sant Ji, but at the same time, they also received like a blessing as well. Right? That Sant Ji indirectly said that the poem was actually good. But if you wrote it about Guru Sahib, the poem would have been even better. So that shows how much prem Sant Ji had for Maharaj.
Hanji.
So that's one anecdote about Sant Ji's humility. There's another one I'd like to share that Giani Preetam Singh Ji has written about himself. And Giani Ji writes in their Jeevani that once there was a Katha in a Sahajade Pind, a village. And during the evening Katha, every Singh had their own rail. So as we said before, if you can imagine, it wasn't that there was like 150 rails all together and you just pick up your rail when you wanted. Because then you'd have a lot of things going on where there might be rails going missing and so on. Everything had their own rail and it was their responsibility to look after their own pothiyan and raila. So the stand that they're going to put the pothi sahib on, that was their duty. But sometimes the Singh might have left it in the darbar or left it somewhere. And Giani Ji went to where they used to usually keep their rail and it wasn't there. Right? And they looked around and they couldn't find their rail. And they were getting a bit stressed that the katha is about to start. And another thing, Sant Ji was very punctual in their katha. When the time used to start for katha, it would start. They wouldn't wait for anyone. It was the Singh's duty to come on time for their lessons or to sit in the katha. Sant Ji wouldn't wait around for them. The katha would start. If you missed it, you missed it. Right? Because that was their discipline. If we already looked at their timetable, there was no time to like wait around for people. So Giani Ji was getting stressed that the time's running out and the katha is about to start. I can't find my rail. And there was another Singh, Bhai Jivanpal Singh, Nihung Singh, in the Jatha, and he said to Giani Preetam Singh Ji that, "Oh Singh jada hai na udhar baitha, orne teri rail chak liya. He's taken your rail." That Singh, he's taken your rail. And he'd already prakashed his pothi. Giani Ji is like, how do I go and say to him, give my rail back? He's already sitting with his, the katha's about to start. Usi waqt, at the same time, Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji came into the darbar. And as I already said, where Sant Ji had so much prem for the Singhs, they also had a very high discipline. And there wasn't room for messing around or being lazy and all these things in Sant Ji's Jatha. And when they saw that all the Singhs are sitting with their illa, but Giani Preetam Singh Ji is still walking around, they said, Thoda ja beer ras vich Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji said that, what are you doing? That the katha is about to start. That, why are you still walking around like this? And before Giani Preetam Singh Ji could even explain like what had happened, Sant Ji was going towards the tabbya to start the katha. So Oda idda ho gaya that day that Giani Ji couldn't sit down and open his pothi, and they just had to sit there and listen to the katha because there was no rail. They couldn't find a rail. And they got a bit upset with Sant Ji because Giani Ji was quite young at the time. And as like a child or like a teenager, you could say, at that time, like Sant Ji didn't even listen to me. Obviously that was, Sant Ji just saw that Giani Ji was just walking around and they just said, Tu jaake baith ja ki karda? You should be sitting down ready for the katha. And they just went and started the katha. And Giani Ji got really upset. And Giani Ji, Giani Preetam Singh Ji, every single day, they used to go and help the Singhs do a shnan of Sant Ji, because Sant Ji had become quite old at the time. And they couldn't always do a shnan by themselves. So the Singhs would help Sant Ji do a shnan. And Giani Ji themselves would go every day and they'd also do malish of Sant Ji. They would massage Sant Ji's legs and so on. So you can imagine how much walking Sant Ji's doing. Afterwards, the Singhs would do seva of Sant Ji. And that day, Giani Ji didn't go. You know, when you get angry with someone, then you don't go. Giani Ji didn't go that day. And look how much attention Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji had. That they noticed that Giani Ji hadn't come. So many Singhs to go. But every little detail Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji would look for. Every Singh, are they happy? Or how are they doing in the Jatha? Is there any kami that they need? And Sant Ji noticed that Giani Ji hadn't come, and he realized that it's because earlier on I might have scolded Giani Ji a little bit. Giani Preetam Singh Ji learned Santhia from Vaid Ji, Sant Giani Niranjan Singh Ji Vaid Ji, who was another very prominent student of Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji. And Vaid Ji, and they were known as Vaid Ji because they used to make davaiyan as well. They used to make Ayurvedic medicine. And Vaid Ji used to teach Santhia, Gurbani Santhia, and they used to teach the smaller philosophical granths, as mentioned earlier. So Giani Preetam Singh Ji, when he entered the Jatha, the Katha of Guru Granth Sahib Ji, he learnt from Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji. All the Singhs learnt that from Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji. But maybe Gurbani Santhia or Shote Granth, meaning the philosophy, that would be split up between the senior Singhs and they would teach the new Singhs in the Jatha. Because Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji couldn't teach everyone Santhia. We've already seen how packed their day was. How would they teach every single 150 Singhs one by one, teach them Gurbani Santhia? So these sort of duties, they were split up between the Singhs and the Jatha. And Vaid Ji used to teach a lot of Singhs, and Giani Preetam Singh Ji learnt the Santhia of Gurbani and the Shote Granth from Vaid Ji. And because Vaid Ji was like Giani Ji's Gurbani Santhia Ustad, Sant Ji said कि तेरा जेड़ा विद्यार्थी आ वो आज आया नहीं, वो रुस्के नहीं आया, है ना? रुस्के means that he's become upset and he hasn't come. So कित्थे हैगा? उन्हों जाके लिया. So Giani Preetam Singh Ji says that at the time I was doing Langar Seva and the Singhs came, Vaid Ji came and other Singhs came and they said that Sant Ji is asking to meet you. And Giani Ji went reluctantly because he knew that, because he felt maybe Sant Ji is going to tell me more off now. So he went there and the opposite happens. And it shows that someone might question why was Sant Ji, why did Sant Ji scold the Singh sometimes? Imagine you've got a group of 150 to 200 Singhs sometimes, right? And you have to keep discipline in the Jatha as well. But where Sant Ji kept that discipline, they also gave a lot of prem. The prem was the main point that every single Singh in the Jatha talks about. And they say that at that time, when Giani Preetam Singh Ji entered the room of Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji, Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji got the punya of the parna. The parna or the hazuriya, so that means the scarf that this parna hai. They got the corners of it. And in India or Indian culture, we could say, when we're going to receive something, or choli atade hunde na? Like when someone was going to go to a Raja and get charity off them or get some award from them or something, they would get the choli, meaning the like their scarf. They would open their scarf and they'd say, put the blessings into my choli. That's like a common saying in Punjabi as well, कि साडे चोली विच चीज बख्श दो, खुशियां बख्शो चोली विच. So Giani Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji took both corners and they made like a choli from their hazuriya, from their scarf, and holding both corners of their parna. Yeah, first they showed the choli, and then they, with the same corners, they held their ears. And this is amazing because that's something usually like someone who's done something wrong, like a small child, they'd hold their ears and say sorry in Indian culture, right? Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji holding their ears with the corner of their parna, they said likhariya, because Giani Preetam Singh Ji was the likhari of the Jatha. And likhari means that they were like the writer, so the diary writer, taking the bookings of Sant Ji. Okay, where is Sant Ji going to go next? And also writing down that in every single village, how many people took Amrit, which Katha was going on. So every little detail, Giani Ji used to write it. That was their duty, and that's why they were called likhari. Likhari means a writer. So where they wrote the Arth of Gurbani, of Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji, they wrote all that down. So that made them likhari as well. But especially they were the likhari of the whole Jatha. So even when a new Singh used to enter the Jatha, it was Giani Ji's duty to take down all their details, keep that information safe. So they were known in the Jatha as a likhari. And Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji used to call them likhariya. They said, likhariya, jede mere bachan, if I said any bachan which upset you, put that bachan into my choli and forgive me. Minu maaf kar de. And Giani Preetam Singh Ji says that when I heard these bachan from Sant Ji, I started to cry. Right? Tears started to roll from my eyes because I got so emotional that in this world, the students, the vidyarthis, when they do something wrong, they go and they ask for maafi from their ustad. But this is the first time I'm seeing that ustad is asking maafi from their vidyarthis. And in reality, it was my fault. It wasn't their fault. They were just doing their duty, right? They were telling the Singhs that, jaake baitho, katha vich baitho. I should have taken more care of my reel. It was all my fault, but I just got upset with Sant Ji. But bringing themselves down, even though it wasn't, Sant Ji didn't need to do this. They were fully in their right to say to Giani Ji that go and sit and you should be ready for the Katha. Right? But still, they had so much praying for the Singhs, and they felt that if any Singh was upset, that Singh, usi waqt I asked maafi from that Singh. Right? And Giani Ji at that time, they got so emotional and tears are coming from their eyes, and they fell at Sant Ji's charan, and they said, Nahi Mahapurusho, they said, Sant Ji, in reality, I made the mistake. I said, forgive me. And us waqt Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji got in this state of kirpa, you could say. And they said to the Singhs, us samay Bhai Kartar Singh Ji Premi was there. And they said to them that, Panj Singhan nu liao. Getting Panj Singhs, do ardas in front of Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Ke jo Preetam Singh diyan Guru naal ganda ya, prem diya ganda ya, wo sada pakke rehn. That means the ties of love to Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, the ties of love of Sikhi, may they always remain tight. May they always remain mazboot. Meaning that he'll never fall in Sikhi, do the ardas. And his love for Guru Sahib may always be intact. So Mahapurush got the Singhs to do the ardas. One final thing about the humility of Sant Ji, and then we'll move on to another topic, is whenever Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji used to do the Larivaar Katha and he used to come to the pog of the Katha, meaning the end of the Katha, on the last day of the Katha, when the pog used to happen, after the pog, Alamgir Sahib, similar to how previously we talked about, they got the corners of the Hazuriya and they did it in front of Giani Ji. In the same way, in front of thousands of Sangat at that time, there was thousands of people sitting there. And Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh got the corners of the Hazuriya and placing it in front of the Sangat. They said to all the Singhs sitting there, all the Vidyarthis, they said that if I made any mistake, or if any Singh has had any kami, any kata, or anything that they feel that in the Jatha, that we didn't get all the facilities, or Mahapurush they told us off here and there. They said, place all them mistakes of mine in my choli and forgive me. In the Larivaar Katha, you can actually listen to this as well. If you go to the audio recording of Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji doing Katha, in the last final track, they actually say these bachan. They say, Sare Singhan nu jinna sama jathe vich rehnde a, ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਜੇ ਦਾਸ ਕੋਲੋਂ ਕੋਈ ਗਲਤੀ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਕਿ ਦਾਸ ਨੂੰ ਬੱਚਾ ਜਾਣ ਕੇ ਮਾਫ ਕਰਨਾ, ਦਾਸ ਦੀ ਗਲਤੀ ਨੂੰ ਚੇਤੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਰੱਖਣੀ. Right? Recognize me as a child. And you know, like when a child makes a mistake, we say कि बच्चा जान के, we do this on अरदास, मारा सानू बच्चे जान के माफ करना. That we're unaware. Na? Same Mahapurush saying, recognize me as a child and forgive me. And any galti that I've done, any mistake I've done, don't keep that in your mind. Please forgive me.
ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਸਿੰਘਾਂ ਦੇ ਚਰਨਾਂ 'ਚ ਬੇਨਤੀ ਹੈ, ਜਿੰਨਿਆਂ ਰਹਿੰਦਿਆਂ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ ਸਾਥ ਗੁਰਮੁਖਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲਾਹਾ ਉਠਾਇਆ ਹੈ, ਬੜੇ ਭਾਗਾਂ ਵਾਲੇ ਹੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ. ਅਤੇ ਦਾਸ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਜੋ ਗਲਤੀਆਂ ਹੋਈਆਂ ਹੋਣ, ਉਹ ਆਪਣਾ ਬੱਚਾ ਜਾਣ ਕੇ ਮਾਫ ਕਰਨਾ, ਗਲਤੀ ਚੇਤੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਰੱਖਣੀ, ਅਤੇ ਗੁਰਸਿੱਖੀ ਦਾ ਦਾਨ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਅਰਦਾਸ ਕਰਨੀ, ਦਾਸ ਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰਾਪਤ ਹੋਵੇ, ਅਤੇ ਸੰਗਤ ਮਿਲ ਕੇ ਗੁਣ ਗਾਓ ਤੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਜੀਵਨ ਨੂੰ ਸਫਲਾ ਕਰੋ. ਸਭ ਸੰਗਤਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ.
That's how much humility Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji had. That in the world we see that someone who's in the position of like a sant, or someone who's in the position of a teacher, you won't see them asking forgiveness from their students. But Sant Ji would themselves do benti to the students that if I made any mistakes, that isi waqt mainu wo jehde galtiyan ya wo mere choli ch pa do.
So you give many examples of Mahapurush's nimarta, their humility, and also the prem that they had for the Singhs in the Jatha as well, Ji. Can we touch upon more about their udarta as well, and their loving nature and their giving nature to many of the Sangata and the Gursikhs?
So another quality in Sant Ji's life is they never had any attachment to Maya.
Mm.
And so much Sangat would give them Maya, but Sant never held on to that Maya or gave that Maya to their family. So there's many examples from their life. We'll go through one or two examples just to show how their Udarta was. Udarta means they're giving nature.
Mm.
Whenever Sant Ji would go to any takat, the Kara Prasad they would do for the Sangat or the Langar they would give beta to, it would be thousands of rupiye. And in them days, the sort of value of that as well was very high.
Hanji.
They never held on to any sort of Maya for their own personal gain. Anything required any sort of facilities or they required any buster, Sant Ji would give them the money. So there's one story which really illustrates this, is that they had no attachments even to their own clothes.
Mm.
Forget Maya or forget notes of money. Even their own clothes, they had no attachment to it. There's a story of a Munava pind, and Sant Ji's walking from that pind, that village, to Pindra, where the main headquarters were. On the way, there was a Sikh who was quite greeb, lived in a lot of poverty. And that Gursikh saw Sant Ji's chola, and they said to Mahapurush that, Mahapurush, thada chola bahut sundar lagda. And usi waqt, Sant Ji took off that chola and they gave it to the greeb Sikh.
Hanji.
And
Wow.
taking like a chadar, they wrapped that chadar on their own body and they walked back to Pindra just in the chadar.
Mm.
That even their own chola, they didn't have no attachment to it.
Mm.
Usi waqt, they gave it to the Singh. There's so many other stories that Sant, when Sant Ji was at Amritsar, every single day there was a Gursikh at Baba Tal Sahib, a Nihung Singh. And that Singh, he was blind and he didn't have a lot of money or anything like that. He would just live around Baba Tal Sahib, langar shak ke guzara kar lena. Every single day he used to sit there and recite Akal Ustat from memory.
Wow.
He couldn't read a book, he was blind, but he had Akal Ustat memorized. Every single day he used to recite it. And when Sant Ji would go past him, Sant Ji just dropped 100 rupiye into his lap. ਇਹ ਸਿੰਘ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਬਾਣੀ ਪੜ੍ਹਦਾ ਆ ਤੇ ਇਹਦੀ ਦੇਖਭਾਲ ਹੋਵੇ. Any ਸਿੰਘ would come to Mahapurush and they'd do ਬੇਨਤੀ ਕਿ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਮਦਦ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਆ, ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਪੈਸਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ, ਸਾਨੂੰ ਭੇਟਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ, ਉਸੇ ਵਕਤ ਸੰਤ ਦੇ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ. ਤੇ there's a lot of other stories ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰੀ when Sant Ji went to Calcutta and the Sangat there, they gave Sant Ji, once there was a Gursikh called Bhai Meer Singh, and he gave a mattress, talai, a mattress which is about 700 rupiye at that time. That was quite expensive at that time. And unhone socha that when Sant Ji is going on long travels, they can use this mattress in a car or something and they can sit comfortably and go.
Hanji.
But he didn't realize this wasn't the way that Sant Ji led their life. They'd rather walk miles and miles. And Sant Ji, usi waqt, because it was a new mattress, they didn't use it for themselves. They gave it to Gurdwara Fatehgarh Sahib as a mattress for Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj. So anything they would get, which is of quality, they would think that this item of quality, I shouldn't be using it. This should be used for Guru Sahib.
Hanji.
The mattress, they gave it to Guru Sahib. There's another story. Do you remember it about I think it was like 25,000 or something?
It was, I was reading in a Jeevani that somebody donated 25,000 rupees to Mahapurush, and they only took a small amount for the jatha, just for a dekbal and stuff like that. And the rest of it, they just said, spend it on Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj's Sukhasana Sthan, Guru Sahib Ji's Sachkhand. So when I read that, I was amazed by that, that they would only take enough for their own livelihood and the Guru Sikhs, the students, but the rest was given back for Guru Sahib Ji.
Their mind was always attuned that how do we save our Guru Sahib?
Hanji.
So one of the qualities we can see in Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji's life is the parpakta of their ret, how steadfast they were in their ret. And there's a story of Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji. Once when they were doing Ishnan, Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji used to wear quite a large Siri Sahib. When they were doing Ishnan, they would swap that for just a slightly smaller Siri Sahib, which would fit on their dastar.
Hanji.
Also, Sant Kartar Singh Ji actually tell this in their Katha, that for the duration of maybe like 1 second, that much time, when we were swapping the Siri Sahibs, Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji had no Siri Sahib in contact with their body.
Hanji.
And when that happened, Sant Kartar Singh Ji says that scolding I got from Sant Ji, I've never got that any other time in my life. That shows that how much Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji had prem with their ret. Also, right at that time, Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji, they put their Siri Sahib on and they went towards the darbar and they called 5 Singhs and said, Huni minu tankha lao. Tankha is whenever we make any digression in the ret, then if it's a Bajjar karet, we go to the Panj Pyare.
Hanji.
Bajjar means a very big mistake. We go to the Panj Pyare and we tell them our mistake, and then they give us a seva, or they give us a certain amount of bani to read. And when it's something like a Siri Sahib, which gets separate from our body for any reason, the Panj Pyare say you don't need to go to Panj Singh.
Hanji.
Right? You just need to do ardas by yourself and Japji Sahib. But Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji has so much dridta in their ret that they called Panj Singhs at that very moment. They said, do ardas for me, that for 1 second that Siri Sahib wasn't on my body. Also, the Panj Singhs, they said to Mahapurush, eta bahut choti gall hai, tusi inna apne man te na lao. But Mahapurush kende no, that this I have to get ardas done by Panj Singh. The Panj Singh at that time, they did ardas, and then Mahapurush said, give me a tankha. Give me like, we say punishment, but tankha isn't really a punishment. It's like it's a blessing really to be able to read Bani and to do seva. The Mahapurush at that time, the tankha was given that from Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji read Japji Sahib 5 times. And then Mahapurush said, I'm going to read the Japji Sahib, but all the Jathe Singhs read 5 Japji Sahibs for me as well. Right? So that's how much dridta, how much prem they had for their ret. And Mahapurush actually said to the Singhs at that time, they said, Singho, ਜੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ 5 ਕਾਰ ਦੀ ਰਹਿਤ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ, if we're not steadfast in the ਰਹਿਤ of our 5 ਕਾਰ, ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਕੁਛ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ. We have nothing. We might have all the other things, we might have all the other qualities, but if we're not steadfast in the ਰਹਿਤ, then we have nothing, because ਰਹਿਤ is what pleases Guru Sahib. ਰਹਿਤ ਪਿਆਰੀ ਮੁਝਕੋ ਸਿੱਖ ਪਿਆਰਾ ਨਾ ਹੈ. And in Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji's life, the aim of their life, we said this before, it was pleasing Guru Gobind Singh Ji. And if Maharaj isn't happy, then Mahapurush said, I've got nothing. Mere ko kuch nahi hega, sade kol kuch nahi hega. We've got nothing. So that's just a small sakhi on their ret, which I wanted to touch on.
And just earlier, Ji, you were talking about Giani Preetam Singh Ji and their senior students, and talked about Giani Niranjan Singh Ji as well. And many of the names were mentioned. And you also mentioned Gurmukh Prakash as well. And I know many times when we've done your Sangat Ji, you've showed us Gurmukh Prakash and you read different lines from there. And there's a section in there which actually talks about a lot of Mahapurush's students, right? Can we go a bit through the Jeevani? Can we go through the students of Mahapurush? And you also mentioned the Katha. And I'm sure one of the students did the seva of recording of that Katha, right?
So the students of Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji, if we start talking about them, we could probably sit here for countless hours. Every single one of them students has their own amazing stories. So I'm going to try and keep it very short. Gurmukh Prakash Granth is Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji's poetical work, in which they, in the form of poetry, they go through a very summarized form of Sikh itihas, and also the whole life story of Sant Giani Sundar Singh Ji in a lot of detail. And at the end of it, Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji, very small section of the Granth, you could say, they talk about their own Jeevan, their own life. And in that section, they give the name of all their students.
Anji.
And there's about 519 students that they list in that list. And in them names, they also give many of the students Gune as well. So mostly they give the pind, the village, and the name of the students. But kete they also give us some of the qualities of them students. So one thing we can say about, before going on to some of the students, is that we can call Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji Ustadan de Ustad. Because some of the greatest ustads in the Panth who taught countless things, Santhia, Katha, or even joined them to Gursikhi through Prachar. If you look at who their ustad was, or who their inspiration was, that was Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji. And in Vichar Mala Granth, there's a line which illustrates this really well. Paras mein ar sant mein, bado antaro jaan, vaho loha kanchan kare, veh kare aap saman. So in this Granth, and it's one of them Granths which we were talking earlier, which Singhs would learn. Paras mein ar sant mein. The Paras is known as the Philosopher's Stone. Right? It's that stone. What is the Philosopher's Stone? Is any ordinary piece of metal, any form of metal, the Philosopher's Stone can turn it into gold. And Kavi Anath Ji has written that Granth. They've said that Paras mein ar sant mein bado antaro jaan. Know this, that in the Paras, in the Philosopher's Stone, and in the Sant, in the Saint, in the Gursikh, there's a very big difference. Vaho loha kanchan kare. The Paras can make any rusty piece of metal into gold. Right? But the Paras can never make that metal into a Paras. Right? The Paras can transform something into a better version of itself, but it can't bring it to its own level.
Anji.
But veh kare aap saman. The Sant is someone who brings their own student onto their own level. Oye bhi chandan hoye rahe, base jo chandan paas, Bhagat Kabir ji says. That's the same thing with the Sant. And we see that in Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji's life, that these words, pure Santa te tuk deya, right? Meaning that they apply to Sant Ji fully, because we see that how many of Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji's students were Sant Mahapurush.
Anji.
That means that in their Sangat, Sant Ji was the Paras, and they not only made them into Sona, they made them into Paras as well. And then them Paras further have made more Paras. So just think about the main, in the 20th century, every single person knows about Sant Giani Janel Singh Ji.
Anji.
Which person doesn't know about them?
Anji.
And who had that effect on Sant Giani Janel Singh's life? It was Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji. Sant Kartar Singh Ji, Baba Thakur Singh Ji, all these Gursikhs, Sant Giani Mohan Singh Ji, these amazing Gursikhs, whose Sangat did all these Mahapurush do to get to that level that they did. So, Mahapurush Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji, their students, there's no end to the list that we can go through. And then again, we've got the Gursikhs in the Panth who we respect so much. Who we could say further on taught the Vidya of Taksal, taught the Sampradaya Vidya. And then you've got those Gursikhs who led the Panth in many different ways, whether they were the Singh Sahibs of Darbar Sahib, the Granthi Singhs, Takhat Sahib Jathedars. Many of them were Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji's students. So, Giani Preetam Singh Ji, because that's someone who I've done Sangat of, so I can talk about them, is mentioned in Gurmukh Prakash. So, because there's so many names, there's 590 names, we'll go through one name, which is Giani Preetam Singh Ji. And Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji writes, Preetam Singh Likhari Para, Mohan Pandariya Nagar Udara, Vidya Karat Abhyas Sadai, Guni Bana Gur Kirpa Pai. So every student of theirs, many of their students, they've written a bit about them as well. What is their quality like? What is their subha? Kete Mahapurush also talk about those students who are a bit chagadallu as well. They like to have debates. Or there are some students who like to do a lot of kirtan. They've mentioned. There are some Singhs who might have liked a lot of gataka. They've talked about that. With Giani Preetam Singh Ji, they've written that he's a very great writer. Likhari Para. Para means very great. And then they write the pind. So every student, the pind is written. Mohan Pandariya Nagar Udara, except for one student, Baba Ajeet Singh Ji, and we'll talk about him later. And they say, Vidya Karat Abhyas Sadai. So Mohan Pandariya is the pind of Giani Ji. And they say that Sadai, at all times, he's doing Abhyas of his Vidya. Har vele, whenever you look, wo apna Granthanu Parda, he's doing his Abhyas. Guni Bana Gur Kirpa Pai. And Giani Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji gives this blessing here that with the kirpa of the Guru, he will become very virtuous. Guni banuga. He'll have a lot of gun. So that's just one student. And you can imagine for 519 students, Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji has written their praises basically.
Hanji.
And that's how much prem and satkar Sant Ji had for their students. So what we can see from Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji students is that their students further gave that vidya to so many thousands of people.
Hanji.
And that silsila, you can say, that lineage of vidya is still going with Maharaj's Kripa. So Giani Ji, Giani Preetam Singh Ji, very quickly on their life, and you can read about their life at the end of Gyan Kirna, is that when they joined the Jatha, before joining the Jatha, they stayed some time with Baba Gyana Singh Ji Rab, who was a very prominent ustad of Shastra Vidya, Baba Akali Phula Singh Ji Burja, Amritsar Sahib. And for some time they stayed there, they learned Gatka. And then they joined the Jatha of Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji. And for 12 years they learned Vidya. And in the Jatha, they also did Gurvaidi Seva of Mahapurush. Because there were a few Singhs who would do this Seva of helping Mahapurush do Ishnan, because from one side they had a stroke. So I think it was their right hand they couldn't use much. So the Singhs would help Mahapurush. And Giani Ji did that Seva for 12 years, and they did the Likhari Di Seva. So they wrote the complete arts of Guru Granth Sahib Ji, and I've seen them notebooks, and so much mehnat they've done in that. They wrote the complete arts of Dasam Bani, Bhai Gurdas Ji's Bani, Surj Prakash. Alongside that, they were in charge of looking after as we talked about, all the bookings and so on. Where's Sant Ji going? Which Katha? Where's the Katha stopped? All these things, they would write it down. Once they had completed their Vidya, Mahapurush gave Agya to Giani Ji that you have to do Seva at Gurdwara Dukh Nivaran Sahib. So this is another point, that whenever in the Panth a Granthi Singh was needed at Darbar Sahib or any Takhat Sahib, the heads of Shromani Committee or I think it was Sant Fateh Singh or Sant Chandan Singh at the time, or the Singhs who would do Seva at Darbar Sahib, the other Singh Sahibs, they would come to Sant Gurbachan Singh to do Benti, please give us a Vidyarthi. That's how highly the students of Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji were respected.
Hanji.
That these things, from their Vidya viewpoint, from the viewpoint of the knowledge they have, they're going to have a very extensive knowledge of Gurmat. But then the Jeevan Pakko, meaning the practical life of a Gursikh, they're going to have very high Jeevans.
Hanji.
So Giani Ji was sent to Gurdwara Dukh Nivaran Sahib, which is Itihasik Asthan, historical Asthan of Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji.
Hanji.
And Gurdwara Dukh Nivaran Sahib, Patiala, many times Giani Ji also during Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji's lifetime, they called Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji there as well. After Mahapurush passed to Sachkhand, then Giani Ji, after some time as Sevadar of Gurdwara Dukh Nivaran Sahib, where there were Granthi Singh and Katha Vachik, and they completed a Sampuran Larivaar Katha of Guru Granth Sahib Ji there. Then they went to Africa. At that time, a lot of Gursikhs, and even in my family, my grandparents, they immigrated to Africa and they started to work there. So a lot of other Gursikhs as well were in Africa at the time. And there's a big demand for Granthi Singhs and Giani Singhs to go there and do Prachar. So Giani Ji stayed for many years in Africa. They did Prachar in Africa, Nairobi, and other areas in Kenya.
Wow.
And after that, they came to the UK. And in the UK, for many years, Giani Ji was the head Granthi of Gurdwara Sahib in East London, Neville Road Gurdwara. And then after that, they became Granthi at the Havelock Road Gurdwara, which is the main Gurukar in Southall.
Hanji.
So, and also in the Jeevan, we find that wherever they went, Giani Ji, that Vidya, they spread that Vidya. So in Africa, so many Gursikhs, old Gursikhs, African Gursikh who used to live in Africa, they took Santhia from Giani Ji there. And then in East London, many Gursikhs took Santhia, and Southall, many Gursikhs took Santhia. Even to this day, Giani Ji teaches. So these Vidyarthis of Mahapurush, the same attitude that Mahapurush had, or the same mission in life that Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji had, which is to spend every single breath dedicating it to joining other people to Guru Sahib,
Mm.
that same effect is also in their students as well.
Haan
We
ji.
can see that to this
Mm.
day. The Katha we were talking about, Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji's Katha, that Katha was recorded by another Mahapurush who is doing a lot of prachar and joining a lot of people to Gurbani in Canada, Bhagat Jaswant Singh Ji.
Mm.
Their Jeevan is amazing in that they were given the seva of actually recording the whole Katha of Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji that Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji did.
Waheguru.
And that Katha is very unique in that that's the first time a complete Larivaar Katha of Guru Granth Sahib Ji was ever recorded.
Mm.
And as we said before, that the Singhs used to take so many pothiyan and rails and they're carrying all this luggage.
Mm.
In them times, they used to have really big, they call it reela. They used to be really big round spools.
Mm.
And to carry that machine and to carry all them spools, how much mehnat that Bhagat Jaswant Singh Ji used to do,
Mm.
and how much lagan, how much prem they had in recording all of Mahapurush's Katha.
Haan ji.
They would take that from village to village. And you also read in the Jeevani online that kite where the electricity wasn't working, they would get up onto the electricity poles and fix the electricity as well to make sure that the Katha is recorded.
Waheguru.
So it's these Gursikhs' mehnat,
Mm.
it's these Gursikhs' prem and their dedication that today we can listen to the Katha of Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji.
Mm.
And that treasure of Sampradaya Vidya of Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj's Arth is still preserved today. We can listen to that again, Laha from that.
Mm.
So there's many Vidyarthis of Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji. And if you want to learn about them Vidyarthis, then you can go to Gurmukh Prakash and you can read all their names.
Mm.
And online as well, there's so many Vidyarthis. You can say, even today, in this day and age, a lot of people taking Santhya, if they look at their Ustad, and then that person who's their Ustad, who was their Ustad, somewhere they'll find a link to Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji.
Mm.
That's how much effect that Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji's prachar had. To this day, their Vidya is still being shared.
Haan ji.
And then, Ustadji, what else is out there, like in terms of resources and stuff about Sant Ji?
So, the literature that Sant Ji wrote, as we mentioned, Gurmukh Prakash, that's still available today to read. And even though a lot of it isn't really available in English, but on the Nihung Santhia social media, you can find a lot of translations from Gurmukh Prakash, which we try to do on Gurpurbs. But the Punjabi PDF of that is available on our website, which you can find. Gurbani Part Darpan is another very important work which is associated to Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji. And in there you have all the Panch Sanskars in a lot of detail. So the Janam Sanskar, the Vidya Sanskar, Amrit Sanskar, the Anand Sanskar, and the Antam Sanskar.
Haan ji.
And not only how are these Sanskars performed, but what are the history of these from various Granths. So that also is actually Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji told these Sanskars in Katha and Singhs wrote it down.
Haan ji.
And then in that same Granth, all the Kathan Vishram, meaning the Vishrams which are really hard to memorize, or any part, how do you pronounce certain words of Gurbani, that's all written in that Pothi. So that's a very amolak khajana, a priceless treasury in that Granth, which to this day, anyone who learns Santhya, that's a very focal point which they'll refer to during their Santhya.
Haan ji.
Then after that, you've got the Katha of Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji. That Katha is beyond words. Anyone who listens to that Katha, they know that what khajana is in that Katha. It's amazing that if we wanted to listen to that Katha in the time of Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji and listen to the whole Katha, then how much would you have to, let's say, give up in a worldly sense? You'd have to dedicate yourself to traveling with Sant Ji, going village to village to learn that Katha. But now we've got that Katha available for us, but how many of us take the time to listen to that Katha?
100%.
So that Katha is so readily available to us, but we don't listen to it. But
Even
those who listen to it, they know.
Even today, I was just searching on Spotify and it was there as well. I was so surprised. It's everywhere.
So that Gursikhs done the seva of releasing that Katha, which was all on them spools, and they cleaned it and then they put it online. And that Katha, the Gursikhs who can understand the Gurmukhi, they should definitely take Laha of that Katha. But there's many Gursikhs who are trying to make that khajana, make that treasury available in English as well. So there's a very blessed Gursikh Bhai Kamalpreet Singh Pradesi, who I've known for many years. And where they've also for many years been doing seva of running the Gurmat Vichar website. And those who listen to Katha, they know that that's the best website for Katha.
Anji.
Any form of Katha, you'll find it on there.
Mm.
And there's so much Katha on that website that there's enough Katha for more than our lifetime of Katha that we can listen to on that website. But another project that Bhai Kamalpreet Singh has started is the translation of Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji's Japji Sahib Katha. And you can find Bhai Kamalpreet Singh Ji's work on Sikhism in snippets. You can find it on Instagram and other, if you just search in Google, it will come up. And you'll find all the works, all the translations that he's done. So he hasn't completed it yet,
Anji.
but a lot of the bulk of Siri Japji Sahib Ji Katha, and I think it's come to like over 10 volumes now.
Wow.
That he's written. He's translated the Katha of Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji. So those who can't understand the Punjabi Katha, I'd recommend to get support by Kamalpreet Singh's work as well. The effort that he's doing, which is never been done before, which is translating the Katha of Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji. And reading that, you'll understand the depth of Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji's Katha. So that's just a few resources that you can access online.
What about for the Jeevani, the Jeevani of Mahapurush as well?
So the Jeevani of Mahapurush, in Punjabi, there's quite a few different biographies you can read. There's Gurmukh Darshan, which you can get. It's still, I think it's still available to buy. There's a Khalsa Vichitra Jeevan, which is written by Gyani Veer Singh Ji Maddoke, who's another great student of Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji. And then there's Gyan Kirna.
Anji.
And that has been translated in English.
Anji.
So I think you can get that online as well.
And how did that seva come about then? Translating it into English.
So Gyan Kirna, that's something which Gyani Preetam Singh Ji, they wanted that Granth, this biography of Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji, translated into English. And initially, so Gyani Sukhjeevan Singh, quite a few years ago, they did the seva of translating Pavitra Jeevan, which is another book written by Gyani Preetam Singh Ji, which covers the life of Sant Giani Kartar Singh Ji. So that was first translated into English, and that was really well received by the Sangat.
Anji.
And Gyani Preetam Singh Ji also had the desire that this Granth, which is Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji Jeevani, that also be available in English. So when I was studying from Gyani Preetam Singh Ji, they expressed that desire. I did beinti to Gyani Ji if I could be blessed with that seva.
Anji.
And then they gave me that seva of translating it.
My goodness.
So it took quite a few years. I think it took about 2 years to actually translate it.
Anji.
And then actually going through the process of getting the book designed and then printed. And then it was on Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji's 49th Barsi.
Anji.
So just before their 50th Barsi, this, it was the 50th Barsi, I think. Do you remember?
Can't remember.
It's either on the 49th or the 50th. I think it was the
Anji.
50th, I think, that this book was completed.
Well, it's definitely a great resource in English as well on Mahapurush's Jeevani. Even reading it myself, there's all the stories that you've heard as well. Majority that you heard today from Ustaji in part 1 as well. You can find them in Gyan Kirna as well. And a big shout out to Seek to Inspire, who were behind this seva taking place as well. So we'll put links in the description if you want to get one of these copies of Gyan Kirna as well. There's many available. So what would be good now is just to wrap up this podcast and just conclude with some questions that we have as well for you, G. The first one, I thought would be nice to cover is, I know we touched upon this in the first episode right at the start when we talked about Mahapurush's Jeevani, but just one more time, G, how has Sant Ji inspired you personally?
Sant Ji's life, we can say the lives of Mahapurush, they're chanan munare, they're lighthouses. Because when we need direction in our life, we can look at the life of them Mahapurush, who during their life, they remained steadfast in their ret and they followed what Gurbani said. So Gurbani, one way of looking at or learning the art or understanding the art, the meanings of Gurbani is to read the steeks, right? Read the translations or listen to Katha. But the lives of Gursikhs are like a living tika, a living steek of Gurbani. Because what Gurbani says, the Gursikhs practice it.
Anji.
And if you want to see Gurbani in action, we just need to look at the lives of the Gursikhs, the Puran Gursikhs. The Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji's life, one, it shows me Vidya, the importance of Vidya, but not only taking Vidya, but trying to apply that Vidya in your life as well. The Raat, the Gurbani we read, where we're reading that Gurbani, where we're teaching that Gurbani, let's also try to apply that Gurbani in our life.
Anji.
And because Mahapurush did that, we can take that lesson from their life. So just coming on to this point about Mahapurush Jeevaniya as well. This is something we talked about in the first podcast. The life stories of Mahapurush. We can't do Sangat of these Mahapurush in the physical form anymore. Maybe we can't sit with them in the physical form or talk to them. We can read their life and take inspiration from their life. It's quite a nice little line that's written in Sikh Nihya, which is the life of Sant Harnam Singh Ji. A lot of people have read that book, but sometimes we might skip over the introduction.
Anji.
And there's an introduction in there by Baba Thakur Singh Ji. And Baba Thakur Singh Ji actually writes that this book is a spiritual lighthouse. And anyone who is going further away from Gursikhi, the person who reads this book, this will be like that lighthouse which guides the boat. Right? It keeps the boat safe. It brings it back on its path. And this book will bring that person onto the path, back onto the path of Sikhi. It will bless them with Sikhi because it's so inspirational when we read them things. When we read the life stories of Mahapurush or Gursikhs, that inspires us to read the Gurbani.
Anji.
That inspires us to keep it out. One of the first books that I actually read, or two of the first books, the first one I ever read was Bhai Jivanpal Singh's autobiography. That book was amazing because it talks about how Bhai Jivanpal Singh had darshan of Vaheguru. What did they do in their early life? How did they dedicate that to reading Gurbani, doing Abhyas? And then the later life, and this is in their own words as well. Like there's some books like Gyan Kirna is amazing, but that's the words of other people on Sant Gurbachan Singh. But these are like his own words, Bhai Jivanpal Singh Ji's own words. And where he talks about the troubles he faced in prison, but while facing them troubles, he never let go of his Raat.
Anji.
So reading that, it has a profound effect on you. Bhai Ramma Singh Ji, that's another book, In Search of the True Guru. That was amazing because it showed someone who had no connection to Sikhi and how they found Sikhi
Anji.
and how that transformed their life. So these books, they show the transformation of a Gursikh. But reading this, people who are away from Guru Sahib, they get joined to Guru Sahib.
Anji.
So the life stories of the saints, they're amazing to read, and we should never pose that question, why should we read the life stories of Gursikhs? Because their life stories are going to join us to Guru Sahib.
Right, Guru. And just one final question for you, Ustadji, or just a bit of vichar as well, is just on this sanstha called Nihung Santhia. For those who are watching this through YouTube, you can see that the banner in the background, the posters, the logos. Or if you're watching this through the audio platforms, then you can see the details in the description. So Nihung Santhia, as you can see, that's written here, preserving and spreading the authentic teachings of Gurbani, something that was set up quite a few years ago now. And that has a link towards Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji, as you were mentioning yourself earlier, that many of the people that are learning Santhia today, their Ustads, they all link back to Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji. So, Amarjeet, yourself, you learn from Ustad Jatinder Singh Ji, and they learn from Giani Amarjeet Singh Ji, and they learn from Baba Ajeet Singh Ji, who was a student, a vidyarthi of Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji, and just personally ourselves. So I know in one of the podcasts, somebody was saying to us, because you were using the word Ustadji as well, right? And they're like, who is your Ustadji? And with Guru Sahib's grace, their kirpa, we've got Ustadji on today. But ourselves, we've learned from Nihung Santhia as well for the past about 4 or 5 years, learning Gurbani Santhia, learning different Granths as well. So we're very blessed to have learned this Vidya. Again, as you probably say yourself, Ustadji, has all come from Vadde Mahapurush as well. So just a quick shout out, a biased shout out to Nihung Santhia as well, that please do check them out. They've got a website, nihungsanthia.com. You can email them at info@nihungsanthia.com as well. They've got a YouTube channel, a lot of great resources on there as well. when it comes to learning about Gurbani and many other resources as well. So
And just on Baba Ajeet Singh Ji's life, because their life is amazing on its own. So could you tell us?
Baba Ajeet Singh Ji's life needs like a lot of time to go through it.
Anji.
And Maharaji's Kirpa. So Giani Amarjeet Singh Ji, who was the student of Giani Ajeet Singh Ji, and Giani Amarjeet Singh Ji's life is amazing as well. And Giani Ji, they passed away in 2016. Giani Amarjeet Singh Ji, who was the head Katha Vachik of Takht Sri Hazur Sahib, and they spent many years at Hazur Sahib teaching things as well. So where they did Katha there, they also taught countless things. And their ustad was Giani Ajeet Singh Ji, Sant Giani Ajeet Singh Ji. And just in a few minutes, their Jeevan is amazing because in terms of their physical eyes, you could say, eyesight, they didn't have any eyesight. So Maharaj says in Bani as well, Ande ehe na akhiyan, jin mukh loyan nahe, ande se hi nanaka, khasmoho kutthe jahe. Maharaj says, don't call them anne, who might not have eyes. They're not anne. Anne are those who are away from Vaheguru, who wander away from Vaheguru's path. Those are truly blind. Those who might not have physical eyesight, don't call them blind. Sant Baba Ajeet Singh Ji, when they were very young, due to some illness, they lost their eyesight. But losing their eyesight, that brought them closer to Vaheguru. Their family sort of stopped caring for them, and they left their family at the age of like 5 or 6, and they went to learn Gurbani. And in that journey, which is a really long journey of how they eventually got to Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji after many, many years of learning Vidya from many different people, they finally get to Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji. And this shows Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji's Paras Kala as well, that what we talked about, that Philosopher Stone touch that they had, that someone who we could say didn't have the ability to use their eyes, right? But their Katha was such that Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji in Gurmukh Prakash writes that Katha Vakhyan Kart Bidni ki Buddha Bimal Ras Rasana Miki. So this is writing about Giani Ajeet Singh Ji, where Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji says that the way that Baba Ajeet Singh Ji does Katha is such that is so good, is so amazing. Niki means like really good. And the way that they do Katha is so good. And in the Rasana, in their voice, there's Ras. Right? So to hear your ustad or hear your teacher say that is no higher blessing. Right? And Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji saying that about their student. And Baba Ajeet Singh Ji learned all this Vidya from Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji just by listening to it and memorizing it. And Baba Ajeet Singh Ji later on, when Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji went to Patna Sahib during the 300 Sala Gurpurab of Guru Gobind Singh Ji. And the Sangat there was so affected by Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji's Katha that they didn't want Sant Ji to leave. And they did Benti ke Mahapurush itthe hi raho, just stay here. And Mahapurush knew that they had many other duties and many other places to do prachar. So they said, we'll leave one student here. And they gave the duty of Katha Patna Sahib to Baba Ajeet Singh Ji. And Baba Ajeet Singh Ji, I think for over like 50 years, nearly 50 years, I think, of their life, they dedicated it of doing Katha Patna Sahib. And then at Patna Sahib, countless students actually learned Vidya from Baba Ajeet Singh Ji. And they gave Vidya freely to everyone. And one of them was Giani Amarjeet Singh Ji. Giani Ji's story as well is really unique because they came from Orissa, from a Hindu background. And in the Sangat of Baba Ajeet Singh Ji, they also became a Mahan Vidwan of the Panth. So Baba Ajeet Singh Ji, they never told anyone their pint. Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji actually write this in Gurmukh Prakash because where they've written all the other Singhs' names and they've written their pins, Baba Ajeet Singh Ji, they haven't written their pin. They've written Giani Ajeet Singh Varyamma Dase Pinata Likhiyatamma. And Varyamma means Surma, warrior. And in our culture, we call people who are physically blind Surme Singh because they're warriors. In their life, they're fighting a great battle. Just their life is very hard for them. So we call them Surme. And Giani Ajeet Singh Ji Viryama, Dasse Pind, Ta Likhiye Dhamma. So all the other Singhs, they've written the Pind, like Mohan Pandariya Nagarudara for Giani Ji, or Baba Giani, Sant Giani Mohan Singh Ji Pindrawale, they've written Chak Janubi Khas, Giani Mohan Singh Ji Chak Janubi Khas, or Naranjan Singh Baidpur Daya, they've written their Pur Daya, Daya is their Pind. So they've written all these Pind. For every single student, they've written the Pind. Baba Ajeet Singh Ji, they read Dasse Pind, Ta Likhiye Dhamma. If he tells me the Pind, then I can write it. Because Baba Ajeet Singh Ji, because of the sort of, when they became physically blind as a child, they felt that their family had stopped caring about them. And they left their family and they went to search for Vidya. And then when they took Amrit at Sri Anandpur Sahib, and on that day, the Panj Pyare said that from today, your house, your car is Sri Anandpur Sahib. And after that, if anyone asked them, they said that my Pind, my car, my Naggar is Anandpur Sahib. And they never ever told anyone their Pind. So even Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh, they did benti ke Mahapurusho, mera Pind ta Anandpur Sahib hai. So Baba Ajeet Singh Ji Mahapurush, their Jeevan is amazing. And Giani Amarjeet Singh Ji actually wrote their life story. And that life story is being translated in English and hopefully be available for the Sangat soon. That's just a little bit on Giani Ajeet Singh Ji's life.
Well, hopefully in the future we can do a podcast on Giani Ji, Giani Ji's Jeevan and Baba Ji's Jeevan as well. And maybe just one on Santhia as well, which I spoke to you about a few days ago as well. Just the whole concept of Santhia. There's so much we could talk about there as well, about learning how to just read Gurbani Santhia, which is so amazing in itself, Ji. Just before we finish off and we give you the final moments, just to share any vichar, Ji. We've covered a lot of things in this podcast in the first and second episode, and there are many things that we did not get to cover as well, because even before this we did try to make a plan of so many topics that we could cover. So we do realize that
I think we've only covered like 20%
literally
what we could have covered.
There's so much we could cover, but again, to be fair, for about 6 hours, in 5 to 6 hours in total, episode 1, episode 2 is a lot. But hopefully, Guru Bhagat, in the future, we can definitely try and aim to do more episodes just on this one topic itself of Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji's Jeevani. So just for the Sangha that are listening to this, we do realize that we will make an effort, conscious effort in the future to touch upon their Jeevani more. But what I'd just like to do now, Ustaji, is just ask you if you have anything that you want to say before we finish off, any final teachings or anything that you want to share from Mahapurush's Jeevani, just to kind of wrap it up.
There's a really nice story from Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji's life, which sums up the essence of life. When it was the 300 Sala Gurpurab of Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj, about a month before that, Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji, via train, they were going to Calcutta. They went to Calcutta first, and from there they went to Patna Sahib, and then they celebrated the 300 Sala Gurpurab. And there was a Gursikh at that time known as Sant Indra Singh Ji Rishi. And Sant Indra Singh Ji Rishi found out that Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji was coming to the train station. And he had a lot of praying for Sant Ji. So he said to all the Sangata, there's going to be a whole jatha of many Singhs coming. Let's do the seva. So the Sangat of that area, they got together, they made prashada for all the Singhs. And they went to the train station. And like those who have been to Hazur Sahib on train, they know like this happens where whenever you go to certain stops, the Sangat is actually waiting there with langar. So the Sangat has a lot of itcha to do seva of Gursikhs. And these were Gursikhs who everyone a lot of respect for, because they dedicated their life to doing Gurbani Prachar. And all the Sangat with Sant Indra Singh Ji, they got prasada ready and they got to the train station. And also the train needs to stop for maybe like 15 minutes. And you stop, then needs to carry on. And at this train station, all the Sangat has got together. They've shakar langar, or they've given the langar to the Singhs. And then they go to Mahapurush and they do benti. Mahapurush Katha sunao. And we all know, anyone who does Katha or listens to Katha, they know that to do Katha, you need like a good hour or so. First you're going to do the Mangala Charan, then you're going to start the Katha, then you're going to get into the Katha, probably like 15-20 minutes in, you're actually going to get into the topic of the Katha. And then Mahapurush only had about 5 minutes left. And all these Gursikhs, this just shows as well that how much prem the Sangat had for Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji's Katha. And they knew that in Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji's Katha, we're going to get so much, not only information, but we're going to get so much anand from this Katha. Because this Katha is going to join us to Guru Sahib. And jo Rishi Ji sige, they used to call them Rishi Ji, Sant Inder Singh Ji, they had benti ke Mahapurush sanu Katha sunao. Te Mahapurush Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji said ke ita jiri gaddi a 4 minute hi kharni a. There's only 4 minutes left that this train is about to depart in 4 minutes. Katha kive kar sakti hai. But the Sangat did benti again and again. And Sant Mahapurush had so much respect for the Sangat that they accepted. And in the space of what we can say maybe 2 to 3 minutes, they gave the Sangat the teaching from Gurbani, what is the essence of life. And from Rag Gaudi, Sri Guru Arjan Dev Ji Maharaj's Shabad, these 2 tuks, Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji read them. Nanak kahato eho bichara, je kamava so par girami, gur sevaho, ar naam tyavaho, tyagaho manoho gumani. So Sant Giani Gurbachan Singh Ji said that in our life we just need these 2 panktiyan if we want to understand what's the essence of life. What is our mission in life? What should we be doing in life?
Hanji.
Nanak kahato eho bichara, je kamava so par girami. And these are actually the words of Sri Guru Arjan Dev Ji Maharaj. Where Maharaj says that je kamava so par girami. This vichar, the person who kamas this vichar, meaning the person who embodies this vichar, the person who practically lives this vichar, so par girami, they will cross this ocean of Maya. They will become mukt. They will gain liberation. And what's that vichar? Gur sevaho ar naam tyavaho. Tyagaho manoho gumani. 3 things. Do these 3 things and Maharaj says you will cross across. Maharaj says you will gain mukti. What are the 3 things? Guru di seva karo. Gur sevaho. Guru di seva kardeya. Naam nu tyondeya. Naam tyavaho. Meditate on the naam. Do seva of the Sadh Sangat, recognizing the Sadh Sangat as the form of the Guru. Do seva of Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj. Do seva of the Khalsa Panth. Do seva of humanity, recognizing Vaheguru in every single person. Sab mein hai jot jot hai soe. Guru di seva karo. Pehli gal, seva karo. Guru di seva, gur sevaho ar naam tyavaho. Focusing on naam, meditate on naam. Tyagaho manoho gumani. ਤੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਮਨ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਹੰਕਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਕੱਢ ਦਿਓ. Destroy your ego. What will happen? ਜੋ ਕਮਾਵੇ, ਜੇ ਕਮਾਵੇ ਸੋ ਪਾਰ ਗ੍ਰਾਮੀ. ਮੁਕਤ ਹੋ ਜਾਓਗੇ. ਸੰਤ ਗਿਆਨੀ ਗੁਰਬਚਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ said these words. ਗੁਰੂ ਦੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਕਰਦਿਆਂ, ਨਾਮ ਨੂੰ ਧਿਆਉਂਦਿਆਂ ਹੋਇਆ, ਆਪਣੇ ਮਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੰਕਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਕੱਢ ਦਿਓ, ਮੁਕਤ ਹੋ ਜਾਵੋ. ਸਿੰਪਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਤੀ. ਨਾ ਮਹਾਂਪੁਰਸ਼ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ, do the Guru Seva, and while you're doing the Guru Seva, jap naam and focusing on naam, get rid of your ego. And if you do this, you'll get mukt. And in this way, in 2 panktiyan, the nichod, the essence of life, 3 ਗੱਲਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਮਹਾਂਪੁਰਸ਼ਾਂ ਨੇ ਜੋ ਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨੇ ਦਸੀਆਂ ਉਹ ਸੰਗਤਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਨਿਹਾਲ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ. So this again comes to that point that this was the quality of Mahapurush, that when they needed to expand on something, they could do that katha, these 2 panktiyan, they could probably do katha of these 2 panktiyan for weeks and weeks. And have that effect on the Sangat, and they could do Katha of these 2 panktiyan in 2 minutes and have the same effect on the Sangat.
So thank you so much for sharing that last teaching with us on the essence of life shared by Mahapurush. So we come to the end of this episode 2. So thank you so much to the Sangat for tuning in. And please do send us your suggestions and your feedback as well, and what you want us to do in the future. Any other Mahapurush's Jeevanis that you want us to cover, maybe even different series that you want us to do as well. We've already got a few cool ideas in our mind of what we want to do as well. And just for myself and Gurmukh Singh, please forgive any mistakes that we made, Ustadji, with the questions that we asked and in the vichar that we've done as well. And we'll finish off there and do Fateh. ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ.